I need you more. I need you more. I need you more.
And let's get ready to RPG!
Hello. Happy Sunday. Welcome to the Knights of Last Call. My name is Derek Melinda, and we're hanging out tonight because, I actually kind of didn't have a busy weekend, and next week I'm going on vacation, so almost all my work is done, so I pretty much have a very, very light week before I head out to Las Vegas. So, you know what? I was a little bored, so here we are, hanging out with you fine folks. Kind of last minute, so we didn't really have a stream topic or theme, but we'll just hang out. We'll just chat. If you have any questions or you want to throw some cash our way, go ahead, drop a tip or super chat. Maybe throw your question in there. But we don't have a particular agenda. We may only go for an hour tonight. We'll see. If we're all vibing, if we're all hanging out, if we're all enjoying the conversation, we'll keep it going. We will keep it going. So hopefully everyone is doing well, and we got a poll up there. Let's see how many people have voted. 17 votes. So we'll give it another couple minutes before we end it up. Who we got here tonight? Well, Boothby is here, and he is hopped up on cold medicine. Well, I'm sorry to hear that you're sick, Mr. Penland. Hopefully you feel better. I'm kind of strange. Sometimes I actually don't. Sometimes I don't mind being sick. If I have things I have to do and places I have to be, obviously it's the worst. But there's something about like being sick and just like cuddling up in bed and just staying there all day that is actually strangely appealing to me. It's very strange. A Tortuga DM says that sounds like a great time to be hopped up on cold medicine. And Boothby just got done running a session that way. That's dedication, folks. We call that professionalism. Pepper, hello. Jackal, what is up, sir? Animes Man is here. Super secret. You got a secret. I'm assuming that's supposed to be Mr. Roboto themed. Pillsbury, hello. Jordan has to leave in 30 minutes to show rich people dogs, but they are here for those 30 minutes. Pillsbury, about the poll, says that they are definitely interested in Daggerheart, but I've got so many games on the go at the moment, and I'm probably not going to be able to play it until it's actually been released. You know, Pillsbury, I feel you exactly. There's so many games going on and so many opportunities, and just getting to that playtest is going to be a challenge. I think I could potentially do it with my patrons, but even then I have to figure out the time and figure out a way to do it. Alan is here, and he's a new subscriber and first time catching us live. Well, welcome, Alan. Usually a lurker, but just wanted to chime in and say hi. I'm interested in today's discussion. Well, Alan, we don't really, you tell us what the discussion point is, and we'll definitely chat it up. Looks like your profile pic is you hanging out in the woods, and that's pretty cool. I like hiking. I like the outdoors. Red Gecko says, new campaign on the way. That remains to be seen. For those of you who don't know, we traditionally have done all of our actual plays live in a studio. I live in a fairly small house, so I don't have room here to host a big production environment. So I've always rented a separate studio space, but the landlord is raising our rent. And after 5 years of having a studio, I unfortunately am going to be boxing it up. So it remains to be seen what we're going to do. There's been discussion if the Knights of Last Call will go into exile and maybe find some other way to bring you our studio group together, rather than we just feel like the energy is so much better when we're all in person and we can all be on mics, as opposed to like the Zoom call style that a lot of channels do, which again is not a knock on those channels. It's just not our way. All right, I'm going to end this poll, and we got 11% not interested at all. 7% have already played it. 44% say that they are going to take a look, and 37% said they are looking to run or play the playtest. Now, I know that on the Knights of Last Call Discord, which is part of our Patreon, we've had a couple people run Daggerheart already, and I think there's a couple more scheduled to run. So I'm assuming that some of you are those people. Are we doing a character creation stream? I don't think so, Jackal. I mean, look, I'm happy to talk more about Daggerheart. I am legitimately interested in the game, but I would probably want some more prep before I did that and kind of do it credit. So, what's up? What's up, Sean? What's going on, Chase? Good to see you. Good to see you. Sail away. Hello. Mark, I will. I always do. It's my happy place. What's up, NG? Glad to see you. Good to see you. Keith, good evening to you as well. Jordan, yeah, buddy. I'm glad you made it. Hopefully you enjoy the 30 minutes that you are here. Salute from South Brazil. Hello and welcome. Glad to have you. Usually a VOD guy, but glad to be able to keep one alive. The nice energy about Dragonheart made me definitely plan on running it with my group. Well, Wojo, I think, the fact of the matter is we're a pretty tough bunch here over at Knights of Last Call. We call it like we see it. We aren't afraid to be critique. We had critiques. If you watch, it's a long stream, but if you watch our Daggerheart review, which again was really not a review, it was a first look. It was a first impression even. There were things that jumped out to me immediately as being like, well, this is kind of awkward. This is kind of weird. I didn't like some of the incongruencies. I was a little unsure about like players rolling 2d12, GM rolling d20, GM advantage is 5e advantage, but like PC advantage is Boon Banes from Shadow of the Demon Lord. So it's very strange. That part was a little strange for me. I was worried about the number of damage dice. It felt like it maybe was just, bigger numbers to go burr. And maybe that is the case. So again, there were some definite concerns there, but overall, I think it made a fairly surprising impression to have all of us get excited about a game. Yes, I think at this point in my life, I am more interested in what Daggerheart is trying to bring to the equation rather than what MCDM is trying to bring to the equation. I'm kind of over at this point. It'll change. But at this point, I'm sort of over the grid-based tactical miniature combat. I'm not as into it right now. Warhammer, the old world, just re-released. That's the game. That's the fantasy version of Warhammer 40K. And it's been out of production print for a long time. They switched to this game called Age of Sigmars. It just came out, and I'm super excited to get back into that. And that is going to fulfill all my miniatures moving around in the battlefield needs, hopefully for the foreseeable future. So when it comes to the RPG, I want to do things with the RPG system that I can't do with a game like Warhammer. So I think that's kind of where I'm at. Ask me tomorrow. It may change. I just almost delayed our session due to writer's block. Talked to one of the players, revealed a few spoilers to them, had them workshop it, ended up with a ton of inspiration. Don't prep alone. I love it. I think players are your greatest resource, right? Short of you, I would even say in some cases, they have more skin in the game, assuming that they're legitimately interested and they're not just, hollow shells that are showing up for your sessions. They have more skin in the game than you do. And one of the reasons I really like, Chase
tipped $5.
Sweet.
Derek, you have to get Strike to the table. Played an Avatar/Korra Pro Bending one-shot and a Star Wars one-shot, and it was amazing. It is easily my favorite TTRPG I have played or run. This game needs more publicity. Thanks, Smile.
Yeah, thank you, Chase. I don't need to tell you I'm a big fan of Strike, and I think it just came out at a bad time, and I think the creator had some personal problems that wasn't unable to sort of capitalize that, and people moved away. But a lot of people who are excited about Daggerheart should probably be excited about Strike, except it's a more generic game, so that can be a boon for a lot of people, that they can do more with the system. But it blends that sort of narrative plus mechanical, concept. And again, I know there are games that do that, like Lancer, Icon, Beacon, but I feel like Strike does it in an elegant way that sort of doesn't rely on having two completely separate, independent adjudication mechanics like Lancer, Icon, Beacon do. Where Strike, I think, is a little bit more elegant. Now, is Strike a complete game? No, there's a lot of it's a lot of suggestions. It's a lot of fill in the blanks. It doesn't have a 300 monster bestiary just waiting for you to use. So again, there are some downsides to a small press game like that. But thank you, Chase. But anyways, yeah. Rasmus says first live stream. Welcome, Rasmus. Love the channel. Came for the Forbidden Lands, but stayed for the great content. Well, Forbidden Lands. There's just been so much going on right now that normally I would probably imagine we'd be talking more about Forbidden Lands, because that is what we are playing on our Friday night games. We just had our third or fourth session, and so far it's been really, really interesting. We actually just had our last session was completely emergent. There was a series of random encounters which led to the random creation of a destroyed village, which had been ransacked and destroyed by minotaurs. And then it led to the group trying to reclaim the village for these villagers, these refugees that they had found. And then they snuck in, then they killed one of the minotaurs in the sleep, and then they engaged the other one. And then the druid tried to go out and recruit a local pack of wolves or coyotes to help them drive out the minotaurs as, abominations of nature. And failed some rolls. He ended up transforming into a wolf and then led them into combat against the Minotaur, which was not his plan. Anyways, it was just, it was the kind of, fun, freewheeling storytelling type style of game, but not just made up, right? Like it was based off of dice rolls. And in some cases, me and my players had to work together collaboratively to sort of figure out, how does this all work together? How does this piece together? So far I'm enjoying it. There's some problems. There's a couple of things that I would change about Forbidden Lands, but as I get more experience with the system, I'm hopefully going to be able to adjust those things accordingly. So you watched all Frozen Flames, so I would love part 2 of that. Red Gecko, I've been very open about this, particularly in our Patreon. I feel like the first 3/4, 5/6 of that adventure was of the first adventure of the AP was very good. And as I got to the end, I started to notice the signs of just the super, super heavy-handed role-playing, railroading that made me kind of cringe inside a little bit and be a little bit cautious. And it's my fault. I was really excited about it. I did not read the entire adventure path before we started down the line. I think the second one was out, not the third one maybe when we started. But we started the first one. I didn't really read the second adventure until we were nearing the end of the first adventure. And when I read the second adventure, I was very disappointed, to be honest with you. And that is the reason why we have not done a part 2 of that. If I were to do a part 2 of Quest for the Frozen Flame, I would basically need to rewrite it, in my personal opinion. I think some of the ideas and some of the themes that they set up in the first one were really good. And I just feel like they just do not, I think this is maybe the problem with the Paizo model of having numerous authors work on an adventure path. My assumption is that they kind of work on them simultaneously. So it's not like the first person author writes the first adventure and then the second author, who is a different author, reads that first adventure and then sort of builds off of that. I feel like they probably get together, they hash out some notes, and then they all go to their respective corners and work on a product. And I think sometimes that can hurt. That can hurt. I mean, they got to do something to be able to keep up with the release schedule. An adventure a month basically is pretty tough. But boy, it was just quite the tonal shift. As an individual playing in person, awesome. For the first time in 10 years, that's a long time, Jordan. I wholeheartedly agree that it brings a special warmth and jolly fun, as well as the crosstalk and deep role playing. Yeah, I think people just, they get more engaged. I mean, look, we all know it can be a struggle even at your table to keep some players engaged. And we live in the era of distraction, right? We live in the era of social media and constant phone buzzes. I'm one of the few people I know that, my phone is on 0 notifications. I have to pull all my notifications. None of my notifications are push. So my phone never buzzes. My phone never beeps. I don't even get a vibration. So, and that's a fairly rare thing. I don't have any kids. I don't have, you know what I mean? Like, so I don't have I'm not a manager, own a company, so I'm fairly unique in that situation. But I was going to say, I think that issue is 20 times worse when you're playing on the internet, and especially when you don't have a camera on. And I'm not trying to blame this on anybody, but look, I've been on plenty of Zoom calls, for work, or Microsoft Teams calls, cameras off, somebody's talking, and I'm checking the front page of Reddit, it happens. Of course it does. Especially if it's like something that it doesn't, if I know that what's being said is not quote unquote immediately impactful to me. And I think it's just human nature. And I think the internet had, those internet based games have made that a much bigger challenge to people. And I struggle, to maintain that connection with people when they're so distracted. Yes, Jackal, I was definitely thinking of you as the 7% who have run Daggerheart. You've been running more quick starts this coming week. Come on down, y'all. And I think Jackal Torn Moon's doing a much better job than me at plugging the Knights of Last Call Patreon, because we have a ton of community games, lots of GMs running lots of games, including games of Daggerheart. Pillsbury question. I've been interested in using the Discord more. What's the best way to go about doing that? it can sometimes be a bit intimidating to just suddenly join a discussion in progress or to try to start a thread. Well, Pillsbury, that's a great question. I would say the number one is there are a lot of channels with a lot of discussion points. So I think that if you focus down onto just one or two or three channels that you are particularly interested in, that can be a really, really useful way to sort of filter out the noise if it's too much. You can use the browse channels features in Discord to sort of maybe mute or otherwise shut down some of those other channels that you're not currently interested in. That being said, a lot of the channels have a forum channel associated with them. We have the open chat, right, where anybody can just post whatever they want. But a forum was originally designed as a way for people to take a more measured and sort of thoughtful process to sort of organize their thoughts. I know a lot of people have done deep dives in the forums where they will make, dozens and dozens of posts in a row. And because it's in a forum and it has tags, tags that you can search, it becomes a little bit more archived. It becomes a little bit more of a resource for people to go back and read through what this person was thinking through. So that could be a very, very good way to sort of, get value out of that. Now, there's always going to be channels like General, like Open RPG, which we is actually called, that's the official name, but it's really called the Dumpster Fire, where the talk is going to be fast and furious. So, that can always be a little bit intimidating. I think some of the best conversation in the Discord happens in Open RPG because that's where anybody can pretty much talk about anything. And that's where the concepts get, conversations get pretty wild. Another great way is we have the KOLC content chat channel. And that is about basically talking about what we have just been talking about recently on the channel. So that's very top of mind for a lot of people. A lot of people are going to find a way to, if you have thoughts or questions or comments or opinions about a recent stream, or a VOD maybe that you watched, that could be a great place to put that because that's going to get more engagement. And then there's gaming. Right. And obviously there's Northern Reaches, which is currently on hiatus, but season 3 will be starting soon. But we have two main pillars of gaming. We have our community games, which, again, there's a great calendar system. People are always posting new games. You can sign up for them very easily. It's, we have an integrated bot for Sesh that lets you, connect with that. Many of the GMs have separate channels where you can talk to them about their games. Some of the campaigns are drop in, drop out, where you don't really have to quote unquote sign up for the campaign. You just basically play when you're free. And then the other thing, if time is really, really an issue and the pace of play is really bad, a lot of people have really started to play a lot of play-by-post. We have an entire play-by-post section with multiple play-by-post games going on across a variety of systems. And that's really nice for people who don't have the time to necessarily sit down for 4 hours and play a normal, type of game session where you're all active all the time. So without going too much into it, I would say that those are sort of that's how I would take better use of it. So yeah. Ikemo. So the Daggerheart stream, because we were all there, was amazing. You brought so much experience from other systems. You kind of ruined other people's takes for me. No one talks with as much width of TTRPG experience. Look, everybody, it's an opinion. Everybody's welcome to it. And even if you've never played RPGs before, I suppose you could take a look at a game and give us your thoughts. What I like to think that I do offer, and that Smith offers, is we have a wealth of this experience. We own a lot of these games. We've read a ton of these games. We've played a ton of these games over 30 plus years. So that does give us a little bit of there's not too much that we see that's new under the sun, right? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's possible that maybe there will never be a successor to D&D 4E. But I don't think it's going to be MCDM either. So I agree with you on that, NG. Yeah. Maybe it'll be Dragonbane. No, I'm just kidding. Oh, that's cool, Jay. Oh, let us know how it goes. Happy St. Patrick's Day. Yeah, I completely forgot it was St. Patrick's Day until I left, and there's a downtown area near me for my town, and it's got like the main street of the town, and it's got 20 bars, and it was crowded as all heck. What's up, Mighty Dave? Glad you see you, buddy. Good to see you. We were just talking about, I think we were just talking about you. Like because we were talking about the Quiet Year game at Gen Con, and I think your name came up. Oh yeah, Jay. That's some of my favorite. That's some of my favorite fun when I play RPGs, is because then nobody knows what's going to happen, and that's really exciting. Oh well, that's awesome, Shepard. Thank you. Wild Sea was a refreshing, fun look for me as well. That's a game that I have a lot of interest in, and that's one of those games that's like, man, I wish I could figure out a way to get that to the table and play it with some folks who are really into the vibe, because man, it was so, it felt so familiar in some ways, but so refreshingly new in others. And the book is just a gorgeous feast for the eyes. So, but there are dozens of us, Shepard, out there. There are dozens of us, but that'd be great. Hopefully we'll see that on there soon. Don't you own a company? Sort of, kind of, officially KOLC is a subsidiary of my failed photography business, which technically is shut down, but I just kept it because I had the federal tax identification number, and I didn't want to get a new federal tax identification number. And so an employee identification number. And so technically KOLC is run, the KOLC LLC is run as a subsidiary under Apogee Photography LLC. And according to Not a Drummer, who is a buddy of mine, the sign for my original studio is still up on the old building. So if you drive by it, it looks like my business is still there. But you know what? It's not. I haven't been there for 4 years. 3 years. Kalamaka says, London stagged me the day I joined, and then since then, 90% of what I do is on the play-by-post sections. Yeah, obviously, I want everybody in the Discord to get whatever value they can out of it. If they lurk, great. If they chime in every once in a while, great. But if people want to play, I hope that between the community games, the play-by-post games, even Bob and I occasionally run games. We usually do that for the tickets, so it is kind of restricted to the people who are higher tier. But again, I feel okay doing that because my time is fairly limited, and so is Bob's. But the community game people are out there running games left and right. And by the way, remember, if you run community games on Knights of Last Call, we will give you tickets. Now, there's no cash value for these tickets, but you can use them to get stuff like merch or some of our PDFs that we've released and other stuff like that. So there's some, we try to, we try to show the appreciation for the GMs as best as we can, Happy Sunday to you, Frosty. Glad to see you here. Thank you, buddy. I just got your survey results. I haven't taken a look at them yet. On the topic of a tactics game, if I had to strip out the RP elements of an RPG and treat it as just as a rule set for tactical combat, which system would you pick as your favorite? Easy. 3rd edition D&D. And the reason why I know that's true is because they did just do that. They created a game called the D&D Miniatures Tactical Combat Game, or just the D&D Minis game. They used to run tournaments of it. I used to go to Origins and Gen Con and play in those tournaments of it. It worked really well. It was a lot of fun. And they simplified the rule set in some ways. They introduced some, morale rules and rallying rules. There were victory point zones that you had to go achieve. Great fun. Had a lot of fun with it. And I missed that game a lot. It was when the D&D Minis game it was a collectible miniatures game. So you would buy a box, you didn't know what was inside of it. How to 1 rare, 2 uncommons, and 6 common minis. And of course, I bought a shitload of them, which was great for our TTRPG games because now we had a ton of minis of all sorts of different types. But I was buying them also so that I could play, the D&D miniatures game. Wasn't that called Chainmail? Okay, so Chainmail there's 2 versions of Chainmail. The first version of Chainmail, of course, is from like 1972, prior to D&D, which Gary Gygax created as a rule for fantasy medieval combat. And that was kind of like Warhammer, but it was called Chainmail. Now, like late 90s, early 2000s, D&D released a miniatures game called Chainmail, and this was with classic unpainted metal miniatures that you had to maybe super glue together and put on a base. And they had a kind of a different rule set for it. And it was definitely more in that war gaming crowd. And I don't think that game ever did particularly well. And I think it only had like 4 factions or something like that. It was kind of a failure. And then D&D released. And then I think when 3.5 came out in 2003, I think that's when the D&D minis game officially got released. It could have been 3.0, but I could be wrong here. And that's when they started doing, that was with the first set, which was called Harbinger. The second set was called Dragon Eye. The third set was called Archfiends. And then the fourth set might have been Giants of Legend. It was released September 26th, 2003. So that was the first publication. And the D&D minis game went from 2003 to 2011. I was a big fan of it. Ooh, did I get it right? Oh, man, I did get it right. Man, I am so good. Look at that. Let's take a look. Look at that. I got it. There we go. First one was 2003. And then Dragon Eye released, wow, just a couple months later. We bought a shitload of Harbinger. I did. And then I bought a ton of Dragon Eye. Not so much Archfiends. I kind of regret that. Giants of Legend has a fun story with it, though. Okay. So Giants of Legend was the 4th expansion set, right? But what was cool about Giants of Legend was each box contained a huge mini. So normally the boxes that you bought were like, I don't remember how much they were, 12, 13 bucks, maybe 14, 15 bucks, but they were kind of tall and skinny. But the Giants of Legends boosters were like double wide because each box had a huge mini, right? So 3 squares by 3 square base. And I was like, I want to buy as many of these as I possibly can. Well, at the time, Aaron was running a game. He was running a campaign. And so Aaron created a whole set of rules which let all the players buy feats, rerolls, higher ability scores. Like it was completely pay to win. And we had one buddy of ours who just was like, I want to have like 30 feats. And Aaron was like, okay, that'll be like $600. And most of us were like just out of college and working and had our first like, big boy jobs. And of course, back then, my 2-bedroom apartment was like $575 a month or something, right? Just basically free by all intents and purposes. And some of my buddies were in 1-bedroom apartments. They were paying $475 or something, $525. So everybody had money. And so my one buddy spent like $600. And so we had this massive war chest. And so then we went to one of our local game stores and we said, hey, I want to buy like, not boxes. I want to buy like 2 cases of Giants of Legend. Boom. We bought, I don't even know, so many boxes of Giants of Legend. And so to this day, that is the heart of most of our minis and certainly our big, huge minis, because we just bought so many of that set, which was really, really great. It's a lot of fun there. I haven't seen me in a while. Looks like I lost weight. Well, thank you, Frosty. I have actually, last December. So beginning of last December, I went to Vegas and, I got back and I said, you know what? I'm too big. So I've just been being more mindful about, what I eat, and, walking a lot. Yeah, I've lost about 50 pounds, 50 pounds. What is that? Like 22, 23 kilograms or something like that. All total. So, so far so good. But I'm 6'1" and sort of like I pretty much you should be between like 220 to 230 or something like that. But I was up over 300. So I was like, okay, I got to do something. So I've lost about maybe a little more than half of what I want to lose. So if I could lose another, 30, 35 pounds, 40 pounds, something in that nature, I think I'll be good. But thank you, Frosty. Thank you. It's actually been really nice because a lot of my old clothes are fitting me again. And I was like, okay, that's nice. But, I'm 6'1". You seem short. I'm actually closer to 6'2". I seem shorter on camera for some reason. Okay. Maybe, I don't know. The camera, Actually, I don't know, actually. But maybe it's just because, I'm framed in such a way that it makes me seem, if I was like up here, maybe it would make me seem taller. Well, thank you, Chase. Appreciate it. Oh my goodness, the D&D minis game. You just unlocked pure nostalgia. Thank you for that joyous memory. Oh yeah, like Tim, you guys know Tim from the Knights of Last Call, from Rise of Rune Lords, and from Quest of the Frozen Flame. He and I played D&D minis all the time, and he was my buddy. We would enter tournaments. We would bounce list ideas off of each other, and it was just a lot of fun because it was made up of points. For those of you who don't know the D&D miniatures game, let me instruct you. Let's take a look here. Okay. So let's see if this will work. It's kind of crap quality. Let's find a good one. That's epic. Come on, there's got to be something here. All right, here we go. Okay. Bloop. All right. So this is what the original cards look like. I mean, they were, again, pretty cheaply made, I would suppose. This looks like this is from Dragon Eye. So this was from the second set. Actually, I have a ton of these miniatures. We use them all the time. It's a really cool looking miniature. And so this was the Lion Falcon Monk, and there were 4 factions in the game: lawful good, chaotic evil, lawful evil. And the creature had a level, which was basically used for almost all of your saving throws. So like if the creature had to make some sort of saving throw or check, you were just adding D20 plus your level. So the Lion Falcon Monk would add D20 plus 8. Speed was how many squares it could move on its turn. Activation had 19 hit points. All the hit point, or 19 AC, all the hit points were done in increments of 5. All of the damage was done in increments of 5. And it cost 36 points. And in a standard tournament, usually you had 200 points to make a army, and it had to have a minimum of 3 miniatures, and it could have a maximum of 12 miniatures. And you would build your squad, and the enemy would build their squad. So we can see that this guy has a double attack for +6/+6, little flurry of blows action, doing 10 points of damage with the magic trait, so it would get through like damage reduction with each one. He was a humanoid, and he had the independent special ability, which meant you didn't have he could be outside of the command radius of your commander and be okay. He had deflect arrows, which gave him, of course, if you know deflect arrows in the normal 3rd edition game, you're aware that it lets you make, an extra reflex save against DC 20, I think, in order to potentially deflect an arrow. It's kind of a monk thing that they do in 3rd edition. But this game was kind of designed to be simpler, and so the deflect arrows ability just gave them +4 AC against ranged attacks. They were fearless, so they couldn't be affected by fear. They had mobility, which basically did the same thing it did do in the game, which is +4 against attacks of opportunity. And they had a smite and stunning attack. So this was actually a really cool miniature. I made like a lawful good monk build once, and I had some pretty good success with it because the Lion Falcon Monk was a really particular strong one because they could do control with the stunning attack, but they could also do smites with the and do extra damage. So the smite +10 basically meant you were doing 20 damage on a hit. So really powerful. Anyways, it was a really cool game. I enjoyed it a lot. KC, yeah, that's the whole point of it being super secret. You're here for all the Derek lore. Federico. Hold on a sec, Federico. We got a super chat. I'll get back to you, buddy. Mighty Dave says 50 pounds. Dude, congrats. Yeah. Thanks. I would say it was hard, but it wasn't. I didn't really do too much else. It just honestly, like during COVID and after COVID, like I was probably, my businesses had failed and I was indoors all the time and I stopped doing all the stuff that I normally did. But the last, year or so, I've gotten a little bit more normalized. I've been playing, racquetball again. And so I guess I did do more stuff, but it wasn't like a crazy diet and some, paleo, thing, which to be fair, I've done that before back in the day. This was really just good old fashioned, don't go to Sheets at 1 a.m. and get a bag of jalapeno poppers, that kind of stuff. So, luckily, the natural effect of it took effect, but thank you so much for that support. Appreciate it. Federico said, what do you think of games with tactical combat and PBTA resolution for things outside of combat? Would you fuse those elements in a particular way? Federico, clearly you're not familiar with this. I do not like that. Games like Lancer do that. I believe Icon or Beacon, one of the two, whichever one is Lancer, but in fantasy, does that. I don't like where you have these sort of independent systems. One is for the combat and one is for the other narrative stuff. I find that to be particularly, one, very jarring, and two, I find it to be inelegant. I appreciate better design than that. And I don't like really drawing that kind of thick black line between combat and not combat. So that would generally be what I would say. So I would not, for me, I think the best solution is when you can use the same mechanic in combat as you would outside of combat. The old bait and switch, come for the photography, stay for the RPG philosophy to the conversation. Well, I had to do something with all the camera equipment that I had, Woodland. Yeah, I mean, look, art's important. We did a whole stream on art, and while Wild Sea might be a great game, the art certainly helps sell it. Ever notice how hard it was to get enough basic orcs and kobolds in these minis boosters? All right, Jay, I've got a story for you. The year D&D miniatures came out in September of 2003. And so a month earlier, August 2003, was Gen Con. And it might have been the first Gen Con at Indy, actually. I think it was the first Gen Con at Indy. Anyways, D&D was there, and they were hyping up their new to-be-released miniatures game. And they had free minis individually wrapped, and one of them was like an orc warrior. And I went to the booth probably like 10 or 15 times over the course of the con, but my buddy Rich went like 30 or 40 times and ended up, or like maybe 50 times, and he ended up with a ton of orc warriors, elf warriors, and I think human peasants. And so that like formed like the initial baseline of our thing. I mean, I don't know, you weren't supposed to take more than one, but like he would get one, leave, come back like 10 or 15 minutes later and get another one. And, they would just hand it to you, and no one ever recognized that he was the same guy, or maybe they just didn't even care. But he would go back to the booth like 8 or 9 times a day. And he did that for 4 days. And so by the end of the convention, he had just like a backpack full of orc minis. So the orcs were never a problem for us. The D&D minis base set is my main staple for battle map and fights. Yeah, we still use it to this day, all the time. That is where you had the solo mini, right? Yes, exactly, Satir. Later on, they eventually released what was called the Icon series, and it was the big, huge dragon. And of course, the idea was that it was designed to fight against an entire band of people, and those were the mechanics that we have talked about on previous live streams. Ben, hello, welcome, Ben. Glad to see you, buddy. I hate games that have different mechanics for social and combat encounters. Yeah, it's just, I just find it to be, awkward, and it's more cumbersome, and the rules can be more difficult to learn. And there's an elegance, I think, that comes in, using the same type of mechanics. I'm not saying that social encounters or combat encounters or exploration encounters can't have unique things. I mean, obviously, when we think of combat encounters, we're rolling initiative, right? So there's this idea of, you have a turn, there's a little bit more structure to it. But fundamentally, at the end of the day, you're still rolling a D20 and trying to roll higher in, classic D&D, or maybe you're trying to roll D100 and roll low in Call of Cthulhu. So either way, I think there's a, something that's special about that. Interestingly, by the way, one thing that I did like about old school D&D, which they got rid of because they wanted to streamline everything. And I certainly appreciate that. But one thing that I did like about old school D&D in some ways was that like certain classes had a mechanic. For example, everyone knows D&D is a D20 system, roll high. But the thief had this percentage system for their thief skills. And the cleric rolled 2d6 for their turning. And while you could argue that that is inelegant, and to a certain extent it is, it did do something, which was, because it was tied just to that one mechanic, it kind of made that mechanic stand out. It kind of made that mechanic feel special. And maybe it's just nostalgia, or maybe it's just, growing up. But when a cleric used to turn, it felt different. Then once we got to 3rd edition and it was just and especially like, Pathfinder and stuff like that, when turning was just much more just a normal D20 roll, it lost something for me. So sometimes a different mechanic can really make things different. What do you think about Son of Oak Game Studios games like City of Mist, or the update made on the other one, the Legends of the Mist? I'll be honest with you, MJ. I don't really know City of Mist that well. I did not kickstart it, and I have not read it. I know that we have some people who really enjoy it, who feel like, it's PBTA-ish, but it is not PBTA the way that we traditionally think of PBTA. But the City of Mist, the concept of it was not something that I was super, super engaged with. It's possible Legends of Mist might be a better fit for what I like, but it was not something I really got that into. And I just haven't had time. There's so many games that come out. I remember that ad with the DM using a turkey instead of the dragon. Yes, I remember that. Bob is here, and he's reminding all of you to like and subscribe. Inspired by this mechanics discussion, do you have any thoughts of how PBTA might be implemented with diceless RPGing? Yeah, I used to GM Page Press's Amber diceless RPGing. Sue me. PBTA with diceless role-playing. Well, the core of PBTA to me is a conversation, which any RPG can have, and then deciding that there are certain elements within the game that the system cares about, in which the outcome can either be a success, in which the players sort of have narrative authority to essentially craft or shape the world, the fiction, the narrative in a way of their choosing. Or you could have a player failure, which gives the GM authority to craft or shape the fiction or the narrative in a way of their choosing. And then this idea of a middle outcome where the player gets something, but the GM also introduces an additional cost or twist or complication. How could you do that in diceless? I don't know. My knowledge of Amber is a little low, but one of the reasons I like dice is because I like not knowing what's going to happen. I enjoy, one of the things that, don't get me wrong, I like Fate, and I like Fabula Ultima, but games that use meta currency like Fabula points or Fate points, there's a degree there of certainty that comes with saying, I'm going to use my currency, I'm going to declare narrative truth. This used to happen when we used to play Mutants and Masterminds as well. But by and large, PBTA games do not have meta currency. A lot of people think, it's a super narrative game. And in a way it kind of is, but also kind of not. That game doesn't actually care if you succeed or not. It doesn't give you any sort of bennies or get out of jail free cards. The dice fall and fall as they may. And we have to go with the story from that point on. And so there's a feralness with a PBTA game that I think really adds something unique to it. That I think a lot of narrative games that use these sort of narrative meta currencies, Fate being the one that obviously stands out, that can sometimes lack. So, Ben, I don't think of old school cleric turning was a different mechanic, more like you were rolling for an effect, and it often doesn't work at all. Law. Yes, well, that's true, but at least it was, not a limited time resource, right? You could turn infinite times per day. You couldn't try to turn the same undead more than once, but I think you could just turn as many times as you want per day. But yeah, well, it's a very powerful effect, Ben. It can't just, You can't just be turning all the undead all the time. Shepard just joined the Patreon. Awesome, buddy. The one game I have yet to hear you mentioned all is Numenera. Have you ever tried it out? Any thoughts? Cypher system by extension, I guess, but I haven't seen it directly. So my relationship with Numenera is Numenera was probably one of, if not the first thing that I ever kickstarted. Let me see. Let's see here. It's got to be close to the first one. Okay, never mind. I kickstarted Swords and Wizardries, Reaper Miniatures Bones, Rapana Thuk, Dwemer Mount, and Bulldogs before that. But anyways, so I'm a huge Monty Cook fan, always have been. Although I haven't liked the stuff as much as recently. When Numenera came out, I was playing a lot of Magic the Gathering, and so I wasn't playing as much role-playing games, and so I never got it to the table right away. And in theory, I really liked the quote-unquote Cypher system. That being said, I have not seen any of the new Cypher system, the Discovery or Destiny or whatever other really confusing names that they have now for the Player's Handbook and the GMG. So we get a lot of people on our Patreon who are voting to try to get that system to be something that we discuss. Again, technically, I was one of the early Kickstarters for Numenera. Monty Cook has even signed my book. But I've never really actually played it other than maybe like once or twice at Gen Con. So that's that. Have you ever played a TTRPG where survival mechanics actually felt consistently interesting? I don't know, Nin. I mean, we're playing Forbidden Lands. Ask me in another couple months and I'll tell you. I think survival has a tightrope. It's a tightrope to balance on because if you make it too easy, it becomes pointless. It is just an exercise in erasing and pointlessness. I think most modern D20 systems, D&D, Pathfinder, have basically fallen into this category. You have so many abilities and so it's so easy to carry stuff. It becomes trivial. On the other hand, you're trying to serve two masters here, right? Most of the time. When you're playing a survival RPG, you're also probably a hero or a treasure hunter, or, you want to have armor and swords and staves and be able to carry bags of gold. And sometimes the survival mechanics can be directly at odds with those things. And as a result, it can lead to frustration. Now, some people might really enjoy that challenge of having to balance, my encumbrance level versus wearing the best armor that I could have, that I can. But I have found, by and large, this is not true for everybody, but like when a player is unable to basically, even wear armor because they need to carry so much stuff to survive, that is actually very accurate. Case in point, when people went on, crusade or when they went to war, knights did not wear their armor. They had multiple people, they had multiple horses that carried all that shit. It was not practical. In D&D, we expect our character to be wearing armor and having a weapon and a backup weapon and a shield and a helmet and a backpack full of their food and their water and their blanket and their tent. And, we just accept this as being like, well, that's what you do. That's what you need to do to play the game. And so if the game comes out and says, no, I'm going to be really, really strict about this. And if you want to wear all that armor, you're not going to have any ability to carry any of your supplies and rations. And then you're like, you just feel very frustrated,
Bennett tipped $20. You don't have to stream from Vegas. Wander Home is a good choice for Diceless to style play.
So Wander Home is actually on my list as a game that I really, really want to take a look at. Because I don't remember who I was reading, but it came up very highly recommended, and I know that a lot of you folks have taken a look at it. And after Ryutama, I think it came out after the Ryutama, stuff, but someone was basically like, Wander Home is Ryotama, but done better. And I know it won an Emmy, so I'm not saying that it means anything, but hey, it means something to me. So it'd be interesting to take a look at that. Plus, I again, here's the crazy thing that people are always shocked. I don't like leshies and all the cute stuff. But when a game is set in that sort of fantasy fairy tale world, a world of animal folk or anthropomorphic mice or whatever, I love it. I think it's awesome. Root, Redwall, Mouse Guard. I mean, these are all things that I just absolutely adore. But thank you, Ben, for the support. Good to see you, buddy. By the way, Ben, I may have a project for you. I need to do, I'm writing the lyrics to do my own version of the Pokemon theme song, but with Eldamon lyrics. And I'm going to do some cuts. And then I might need some help with the mixing, if you know what I mean. Since I've never mixed a song before. So, there might be something in audio files here. Maybe when I get back from Vegas, I might have a project for you if you want to help out. Forward is a kind of meta currency. Sort of. Not really. Hold is almost more of a meta currency than forward. But forward is just a +1 bonus to the next roll. It's not really a meta currency. When I'm talking about meta currency, Sean, I'm not talking about like using a fate to get a +2 to a roll. I'm talking about using like a fate point to declare a narrative truth, or to say, oh, that guy's my cousin, or Mutants and Masterminds to be like, it turns out it was the villain the whole time, whatever the case is. It's that kind of meta currency in that way. Yeah, I just don't like the, look, PF2 Paizo went with Player Core and Player Core 1, which is the most very boring name, but Discovery Destiny is like, come on, give them better names than that. I need to know which one of these is for players, which one of these is for GMs. Cheats. It depends, John, we can't say cheat. I mean, it all depends, John, on what does the game care about, and what do the players care about? What does the campaign care about? A lot of modern D20 games aren't about any of this anymore. Again, for me, encumbrance almost doesn't matter unless your game is a treasure-focused game. And by and large, treasure-focused games are older school games where treasure is worth XP. And specifically, you have to be able to get that treasure back to safety, back to civilization, back to your stronghold, in order for the treasure to count. And so that meta game of how do we carry enough, supplies to survive, but have enough inventory spaces and weight capacity to take not just coin, but actual XP out of the dungeon, becomes the core sort of play pattern of the game system. When you remove that treasure, treasure for XP, when you remove that treasure hunter mechanic, now that encumbrance in some ways just becomes an unnecessary bookkeeping hassle, and it doesn't really matter as much. Wojo's excited for the theme. It's going to be as amazing as HTS. Horizon Thunder Sphere. It'll be longer, that's for sure. After that Ryutama first look, I'm interested in what you'd think of Dai. It has a GM character sheet, but it's handled very differently from how Ryutama does it. Dai? Do I know that one? Oh, there's literally a game called Dai. Or is it D? I don't know. But it's from Rowan, Rook, and Deckard. I mean, I'd check it out. I'm between dog tours. Jordan, you must have a very interesting job. Curious how you feel about the recent focus on character-driven character death, focusing character death as a player choice with specific narrative and mechanical benefit. Easy, Jordan. If your game is about collaborative storytelling, narrative arcs, character growth and arcs, if the game is fairly complicated and asks you to invest a lot of time and effort, if the game is not set up in such a way that characters can be created quickly or just join and not have a problem mechanically interfacing with the rest of the characters. If the game has minimal randomness, and if my 8th level character dies, and that I can make a new 8th level character which will have the exact same stats and the exact same powers and the exact same feats, when all of that is true, then I think death is already pointless. Why make me go through the extra steps? In that case, I think that it's a good thing, and I like it a lot. And in a game like Fabula Ultima, or similar games, I think it's really, really great. On the other hand, if your game isn't so much about the individual character's arc, but it's more about the player and your experience in the game, it's about taking risks. It's about it, and there's no assumption that your character is the hero or that your character is going to survive. And when that's the case, and the game is set up, character creation is fast, quick, random. A new character can, you could play for 10 sessions and then your character dies. You make a new character in 15 minutes, you're back in the game, and you're not like, well, they're level 8 and I'm level 1 and I can't even play the game. No, if we're playing in a game where I can literally make a new character and join the rest of the party 15, 20 minutes later, and not, there's no problem with me interfacing with them, then I'm fine with death in that game. Go for it. Yeah, that's fun. Make it worth it. Again, death is a mechanic just like everything else in a game, and it's negotiable. I think it just has to fit with not just the theme of the game, but with like the mechanics that surround death itself. I'm sure somebody will mention in chat probably already. Dragonbane does this particularly well. KC, yes, completely agree with you. They are terrible names. They're unimaginative, but at least it tells you what you're buying. Well, the encumbrance audit is a very important part of the Hackmaster 4th edition process, and woe forbid that a player failed their encumbrance audit. and of course, Ben is doing encumbrance character audits. I love it. Also, probably Ben doing alignment audits as well. Have you ever brought up Ironsworn? I know you've referenced Starforged. Yeah, I've never played Ironsworn. I played Starforged. I'd be willing to give it another shot, but there was something there. It just didn't grab. It was there were too many moves, and again, it's designed for a solo RPG experience, and I don't know that it translates for me as well to a group, either collab or a group with a GM experience as well. Fantasy baseball draft, boo. So, yeah. Thoughts on Forbidden Lands so far, particularly from the GM perspective? Great question. I mean, I from a GM perspective, it's been great. The game comes with enough random encounter tables and random legend generators, along with all the other stuff that I use on this channel, that I'm able to basically kind of roll with the punches. And of course, in Forbidden Lands, I use the difficulty modifier all the time, right? So if something's really easy, I might give them an extra 1 or 2 or 3 skill dice. If I think something's really challenging, I might take away 1 or 2 or 3 skill dice. That level of mechanic has been really satisfactory for me as a GM. It's really quick. I don't have to worry about setting a DC. I don't have to worry about balancing a CR. I just throw what I throw at the party. And yeah, it's even hard for me as a GM to understand how truly threatening a particular monster will be. Certainly, we saw that 8 orcs, just 8 random orcs NPCs, were basically able to nearly TPK the party. So it's dangerous, it's scary, but I think it's interesting so far. Chase, take care, buddy. We'll see you next time. So yeah. Do you think Fabula Ultima counts as a game that makes combat and non-combat too different, since it's a Fate-like story game, but then a lot of combat stuff is relative to clincher? Well, Pepper, at the end of the day, when you're in combat or when you're out of combat, let's look at that, okay? Out of combat, you have clocks. In combat, you have clocks. And sure, the objective action works differently because it's more time-based, but the basic principle of adding ticks or segments to a clock works the same in or out of combat. Similarly, rituals work in and out of combat the same. Now, of course, outside of combat, we generally kind of hand wave the time, but in the combat, we have to do the clock because it's more progressive. To me, that's not doing things differently. Most importantly, in combat or out of combat, we are taking 2 ability scores that are relevant, and then we are rolling both of those dice together. And so the core mechanic of the game is the same. Whether I'm in combat or out of combat, I can spend a Fabula point to call upon a bond, right? So in that way, the mechanics are the same. Obviously, combat is going to have this more turn-based system. I mean, that is sort of a given. I mean, not every game can be, Dungeon World or Powered by the Apocalypse, where there technically is no differentiation at all. But I find that all of the statuses that get applied in combat, I was applying all the time outside of combat. For failed checks or for narrative consequences or for success with a failure, but failure with success, but with a consequence. I use that optional rule, of course, obviously. So yeah, I think that I think that it doesn't. I don't think it does it too differently at all. In fact, actually, I would say Fabula Ultima, in my opinion, is a very well integrated game across the spectrum of stuff. That's pretty good, Casey. So yeah. By the way, I have a question for everybody. Real quick. Let me do something real quick. I'm going to change my microphone real quick. So this is my Electro Voice RE20, a big ass dynamic mic right in my face. Okay, so now this microphone is my Rode NT5, and it's actually located right here. And so I'm just curious, how much. Obviously, it does not sound as good. Obviously, it sounds different. It probably sounds more open and airy and roomy. But I am curious, in general, do you think it sounds so much worse, or does it sound, terrible? Or does it sound terrible only just because you're used to hearing me on this thing? I'm just curious. Let me know in chat what you think of the things. It's like I'm talking through a very high quality tin can. Fair enough. This sounds more computery, more electronic. Interesting. Okay. So. All right. Well, we'll get back on the RE20. I'm unsubscribing. All right. Note to self: do not buy an NT5. Yes, this mic is way better. Well, yes. I mean, this is number one, a much more expensive microphone, and number two, it's much closer to me, and it's designed, to be used in this way. So I think it's, great. You're right. This is, it's got that proximity effect, that nice podcasty sound. Welcome to NPR. Let's see here. Have I checked out Gubat Banwa yet? No, I have not. But I do know that it's PF2 plus 4E plus Final Fantasy Tactics. I know that some people have tried to vote for it a couple of times. I'll be honest with you, Jackal. Part of the reason I probably haven't searched it out is because, super tactical games are not really what's interesting me right now. So, I kind of naturally bounce off of them. Not saying that I wouldn't do it at all, but it's kind of it's not the thing that's really interesting me right now. I would say it's my third choice or fourth choice. I'm not saying it's bad, but there's always 2 or 3 other games that I would play before it. And most of the time, if I was going to play Savage Worlds and I wanted something super generic, my go-to game would just be to play Fate. Whether Fate Core or Fate Accelerated. or even Fate Condensed. So for me, Fate kind of trumps Suede. But if you like Suede, I mean, I think it's totally acceptable. And I know a lot of people who really enjoy that game system. So, but it is not even my second choice. It's usually like, I would say it's like my fourth choice. I know so many different games and I'm okay with learning them, and my group is okay with learning them, that I don't usually have to default to just busting out another Savage Worlds campaign or Fate campaign. Let's see. What do you think of the resource tracking in Forbidden Lands? Is it producing the intended tension? Yes and no. I mean, I definitely think it is. I still think it's too easy to carry all of your water and food and arrows and all that other stuff. And I think originally when the group first started off, they just started with whatever, water or food was on their character sheet. But now that they've had time to actually gather resources and fill up their water skins and stuff, and now suddenly everybody has like D12s of food and D12s of water. I'm wondering if that is going to, rapidly shift the tension level. Because it was kind of scary for a little while. But then once they actually got enough food and water, I think it became less of a concern. But it remains to be seen. I'll keep playing it and see what it's going. Again, I don't want it to be so inconvenient that literally the entire game becomes about feeding and, feeding your family. To quote the Agricola quote. But like, I could see where, my instinct would be to make it tougher. And I don't know if that would have, it might make the game more interesting. I don't know that it would make the game more fun, even for people who are into that sort of thing. So it remains to be seen. We actually talked about this. Hold on a sec. For those of you who don't know, in Forbidden Land, the way that let me pull up the Forbidden Lands character sheet here. The way that a Forbidden Lands character works. Okay, I guess not. Forbidden. Come on, Forbidden Lands. Here we go. Sheets black and white. Okay, perfect. Here we go. So the way that a Forbidden Lands character sheet works is you have this resource tracker, and in this case, there's 3 resources that you use in order to track your food, your arrows or water, your arrows, and your torches. And the way that this works is you can have a D6, a D8, a D10, all the way up to a D12. That's the most that you can have. And anytime you use that resource, so anytime you use a torch, anytime you fire an arrow, anytime you drink from your water skin, anytime you eat some food out of your pack, you roll the dice value. And if you roll a 1 or a 2 on the dice roll, then the die shrinks to the left. So D12 becomes a D10 becomes a D8 becomes a D6, and then a D6 becomes nothing, that you have no food or no water. Now, in the context of the game, all of these weigh 1 inventory slot, even if you have D12, which is a lot. And the fact of the matter is that is a lot, because on average, a D12 is going to generate about 18 units of something before it decays to nothing, right? Because by the time you roll a D12 enough times that it becomes a D10, by the time you roll a D10 enough times that it becomes a D8, and then the D8 becomes a D6, and then D6 finally empties, you will probably get 18 rolls out of that. Well, if that means if I had a D12 in my water, that's like me carrying 18 days of water, which is really, really, really high. In fact, it's absurdly high. So I had thought about different ways that you could do this. And all of them were not particularly super elegant. However, a patron from Knights of the Last Call Patreon had a fantastic idea for essentially fixing this, which was to cap the each of these resources so that water was capped at D6, food was capped at D8, torches was capped at D10, and arrows was capped at D12. And of course, if I was going to do that, I would reorder these so that, it would go in that order. But the idea being that on average, a D6 is going to generate 3 uses before it empties. I'm okay with the idea of someone carrying 3 days of water. Again, don't get me wrong. That's still a shitload of water, right? I mean, that's like at least 3 gallons of water, on your character. But it's a lot better than imagining somebody carrying around 18 to 20, milk jugs of water, which would happen if you have a D12. And the cool thing is you make each of these weigh 1. So in this world, yes, you might have a D12 in your arrows. So that's like your character's carrying 18 arrows roughly. And that would take up 1 slot. And then just a few days of water would take up the same number of slots, which is 1. And so, yeah, that I think is a pretty reasonable fix. And I like the idea that someone can carry a ton of arrows, not quite so many torches, and then, less food and less water. And again, D8 food roughly is about 7 days of food, and, that's probably about as practical. When I was on the Appalachian Trail, I would probably say that I probably usually carried 5 to 7 days of food. And, when I was at 7 days of food, I was pretty full up. My pack was pretty full and I wasn't wearing armor and I wasn't wearing a weapon. And like I was saying, in my experience, I usually I only carried like 1 day's worth of water at a time, at most. If I was in an area with a lot of rivers and stuff, I might only carry half a day's of water just because it was so heavy. So I don't mind that idea. I think that's actually a pretty reasonable idea. Let's see. I do really like this method of resource tracking. Assigning caps is a great idea. Yeah. That was a great idea. Came out of, I think Beowulf from the Patreon had that kind of idea, which I thought was really good. Yeah. Water is insanely crazy heavy, right? I mean, a gallon is 8 pounds and most people should drink a gallon of water. That's if like you're a normal person. If you were like out there hiking, battling monsters, hiking for 12 hours a day in armor through heavy terrain with you might easily drink 2 or 3 gallons of water a day. So it really is kind of an insane amount of water. Anyways, but it's an abstraction, right? Like, I mean, we're not literally sitting there trying to calculate fluid ounces. So I think that, the current Forbidden Land system is very generous when it comes to the food and water. I think it's ironically less generous with the arrows and the torches. Because even though a D12 arrows, every time you shoot an arrow, you have to roll the die and it could potentially decay to 10 and then 8 and then 6 and then nothing. Whereas you're only rolling food and water 1 time per day. So it's less of an issue. Water should represent how much water you can get from the environment and carry. Change modifiers for depletion, roll for environment. I don't mind that, James. I don't mind that at all. I think that's kind of a cool idea. Again, you're adding complication. You're adding to make it more interesting. Will that make it more fun? Everything has to be done right with balance. Rolling an extra die for each arrow shot seems like it could be annoying every attack. Jay, I don't think it really is. I mean, it's not like this isn't like D&D or Pathfinder where you might be making 3 or 4 shots in a combat round, right? It's much more slow paced than that. And you're already rolling. This is already a dice pool system. So you're already getting a bunch of D6s together. So rolling an extra die, I think is totally reasonable. I don't mind it. John's asks, why use dice when you can just say max 18 arrows, max 12 torches, max 7 days, max 3 days of water? Great question, John. We've talked about this before, so I'm not going to go super detail into it. But the long and the short of it is, in my experience, having a random number is actually more reflective of how those resources are consumed when you are out there in the wilderness. As an example, at no point would I, and again, this is based on my bias from spending 6 months hiking, at no point would I ever have opened up my pack, looked inside of it, and like gone, I have 7 days of food. No, that's not the way that food works. Some days you eat more, some days you eat less. Sometimes your food is rotten. Sometimes mice get into your food. Sometimes you can make the food stretch out a long time. Sometimes you get a particularly good bite. Sometimes some days you're hungry. Some days you're not hungry. And so I think having it be random actually introduces some of that, the feeling that happens when I was out hiking and you're reliant on, you don't have a convenience store to go get food from. So there's something I think that is really, really interesting. It's the same thing with arrows. You might say, okay, well, arrows, how does that work? Right. But, the idea being that like sometimes after a fight, you fire a bunch of arrows, right? Imagine we play the game and I have a D12 arrows. And during the course of the fight, I shoot, 1, 2, 3, 4 arrows. And each time I roll the D12 and I get like a 5, a 6, a 4, and a 10. I don't quote unquote lose any arrows. Why? I don't know. Maybe none of my arrows broke. Maybe I'm able to extract the arrowheads. Maybe I'm able to, you know what I mean? Like maybe I didn't have any problems with my arrows that time. It kind of introduces this unknown quantity to the game, which I think is really, really interesting. So that's why I think it works. Sometimes the food is Vegemite and you have to just throw it out. Millhoser says the circle around that 3 is so perfect, is beautiful. Millhoser, I cannot take the credit for that. I'm sorry. The Microsoft whiteboard has like a auto shape correct. So if you make like a kind of a circle, it'll turn it into a perfect circle. I very much appreciate your recent words on sincere, not silly role playing, which has helped me immensely in providing my players guidance on how to approach their characters and play. It's revelatory. Yeah, I mean, we usually say sincere, not, sincere, not serious. Like just because you're not taking the game, you're not playing it like it's this over the top drama, the fate of the world, like, and being real serious about it and just being like super hardcore and look at us, we are role players. You could play the game for laughs, but that doesn't mean you can't take the game and be sincere about it and actually be like, look, I'm here to play and we're here to have fun and I'm here to add something, but I agree. I mean, I think it's a great philosophy and that's a philosophy that has really come out of a good buddy of ours, Kaz, who was with us in Quest for the Frozen Flames actual play. And that's just been sort of his life philosophy for RPGs, maybe for his whole life. And I just think it's really good life lesson for everybody. Dr. Waits was playing Hero Quest. It's a great game. It's what got me into the hobby was Hero Quest. My parents got me Hero Quest. To be fair, I had already become interested in, I guess, like The Hobbit, maybe, and like maybe Final Fantasy, or like maybe not Final Fantasy yet, maybe like Dragon Quest 1 for the NES. But Hero Quest was definitely like my first board game D&D style game, and that was, in fact, I could see it. It's on my shelf right here. Hero Quest, my original Hero Quest. Love it. Well, thank you for that, Pigobi. Glad that we entertain you enough that you choose to listen to us. That's really appreciative. I really appreciate it. What's the current Derek list of games you wish you were playing? If you don't list Hackmaster 5, I'm going to riot. Ooh, what is the current Derek list of games you wish you were playing? All right. That's kind of easy, I think. All right. Let's see here. Let's see. List of games I wish I was playing. All right. Avatar Legends, just because I think that world is so awesome. I think this game is so compelling. I think the interaction of the balance moves and the balance track is a very, very, very awesome thing. And I played a lot of PBTA, and I'm excited. I would love to see this game stretch its legs and really do something special, do something powerful. Fabula Ultima. I grew up loving classic JRPG stories, and I just think this is this game has all like the fun storytelling narrative elements that I really appreciate in a game, but also has, the kind of level up and get a cool new power and use it in combat. And I love the spell system. I love the ritual system. There's so much I love about Fabula Ultima. Dune 2D20. I've wanted to play a 2D20 game like as a real campaign for a while, but I just love the Dune universe so much, and I think there's so many interesting things about this Dune system that I want to see it play out. Again, I have not really gotten a chance to run a full Dune or 2D20 system, and not with Star Trek. And I mean, I played a little bit of Star Trek, but then that kind of died off, and so haven't had a chance. So I'd really like to try that. Legend of the Five Rings. We decided not to do it because it was like too much pressure. But I think this system is great, and I love the world of Rokugan, and I really, really, really would love to. I wish I had a game that I could play, maybe like monthly or something, or maybe every other week or something, with a group of people who really knew what they were doing, and we could play on the regular. Let's see what else. Hackmaster 5e is probably not on my list. Again, I don't want a game that is that crunchy and that tactical right now. It's just not on my list. I'm sorry, Jackal. Similarly, Shepard, you said Wild Sea. I don't know the game well enough yet to be excited about playing it. I think there's a lot of potential there, but I can't say that that is 100% what I want to do. Everybody else is playing Dragonbane. I've only played it the one time with Bob. I think it's really fun. It's really interesting. I'm just still so curious to understand basically, does this game have legs? Because I want to see how it operates. I'm just kind of interesting, how that would operate. Still no love for Call of Cthulhu. No love for, again, horror is just not my, it's not my jam. It's not my thing. Burning Wheel Troll. No, like I could put Burning Wheel or Torchbearer or Mouse Guard on here. And don't get me wrong. I think, especially Torchbearer and Mouse Guard. I mean, I love those games, but they are just not on my list right now of like the games that I really, really have like kind of been jonesing to play. Someone joked, and I'm not even kidding. Like this is like, it's on the list, but only when I'm thinking with my heart, right? Not with my head. But like, there is a part of me that kind of just wants to play like a 3E D&D, site-based adventure game. I know it's horrible, and like I would have to like have it be good because I don't want to ever create a monster or an NPC in 3rd edition D&D ever again, just because it's terrible. But I would be lying to you if I didn't say, Aaron and I were talking about something about 3rd edition the other day. I brought up like the magic item compendium, and we were looking through the magic item compendium, and he and I were just getting super nostalgic. And so like 100%, like, let me be clear about this. This is a, this is totally a nostalgia play here, right? This is not like a serious one, but I mean, it kind of is. But yeah, let me think what else. I don't know what else. What games do we got back here? No. If I had the right group of mature players, I would love to do a Monster Hearts maybe 8 to 12 session campaign where you start off as freshmen, and then sophomores, and then juniors, and then senior year. And each of these would take, 2 to 3 sessions. And I just think that would be a lot of fun. I've done this once, but it was one session per year. I did it at Gen Con one year. Thursday we played freshman year. Friday we played sophomore year. Saturday we played junior year. Sunday we played senior year. But these were one session, 3 to 4 hours. And it was so cool. It was so much fun. I would like to do that with a little bit more time, to feel out each of those elements. But I just feel like, to do it in a way that each year of the high school was almost like a season of a TV show. Now, granted, I'd have to be playing with the completely right mindset for a Monster Hearts game. And, I think the minimum that you can run a Monster Hearts game is PG-13. I personally would want to run my Monster Hearts game, rated R, possibly rated mature, just because that is what I want out of that storytelling experience. I mean, again, this is just my wish list, right? Of games that I want to play. I'm just looking at my shelf behind me. God, I have so many new games that I want to check out. I'm interested. Oh. I don't even know why this game is so compelling to me, and I have no idea what it would look like if I was even able to play it. But I'm also very interested in Traveler. There's something about the game that really grabs me. It grabs my sci-fi senses. I wouldn't want to play like the super awesome Space Marines kicking ass and taking names, but I do think that would be pretty cool. How about Ars Magica as a huge left field option? I was interested. I thought there was a stuff that I liked about Ars Magica, but I wouldn't say it makes the list. Not saying that it was a problem. I just think that's where I would go for this. Let me see what we got here. I have the Dragon Warrior music and sound effects permanently etched in my brain. Oh, I can hear the sound of the monsters being hit so bad. Like that is definitely stuck in my brain. Federico says D&D 3.5. No. D&D 3E. I actually prefer 3rd edition to 3.5 edition. Clementia's Cards and Quests. I just finished watching your video on Powered by the Apocalypse game, and this live popped up. Are you still loving these games 2 years later? Absolutely. They're some of my favorite games. In fact, I would say my number one game that I want to play, Clementia, is Avatar Legends. Very excited. I love the world of Avatar. I love the way that Magpie took the PBTA games mechanics and made them interesting and tied them back into the Avatar concepts. I thought it was really, really, really good. Michael says, I love the idea of Dune, but I struggle since I don't think I can tell stories like Frank Herbert, and it feels a bit like sacrilege. Michael, I think that's why, again, I like the idea of playing Dune, but kind of doing alternate history and going and seeing it almost more like a what if. Like, what if Paul wasn't the Kwisatz Haderach. Maybe he was very powerful. Maybe he was even prescient. Maybe he was even like a pseudo Kwisatz Haderach, like kind of like the way Count Fenring was, but he wasn't actually the Kwisatz Haderach. And then what would happen? What would happen as a result of that? What would happen in the world post Atreides betrayal or something like that? I just think that's a really interesting idea. That's a solid wish list. I mean, you know, and again, I also want to be playing for Forbidden Lands, but we are currently playing Forbidden Lands, so at least I'm getting one. Daggerheart, Daggerheart's a playtest, Millhauser. So, you know, I'm not saying I would be upset. I would love to get Daggerheart to the table, but I don't really consider that like a game yet because it's just in the beta test. You know, I don't play video games really. Okay, I really don't play video games at all. But certainly I stopped playing video games before it became like acceptable that like people pay money and then engage and play and spend money and stuff on games that are not even released yet. Like they're buying the beta and they're paying for the beta. Like I'm one of those people. It's like, I'm patient. I'll just wait till it's finished. Well, Sean, I'm glad that you got to join us live. Tundalus, $5. Derek, I got to hear your top 5 3E, 3.5E prestige classes. Well, Tundalus, that's actually super easy. None. I don't like prestige classes. I would say I played 3rd edition from the day it came out in September 2000 through 2008 or 2009, whenever 4th edition came out. Okay. We played 3E, we played 3.5 almost exclusively. And I was a player some of the time. I was a GM. I would say I was a GM like 90% of the time. I was a player 10% of the time. So 9 years of 3rd edition. And I played with a group that ranged from 4 to 7 people. And in that entire time, and by the way, you know, we were young, we were in our 20s. Like some campaigns only lasted, 10 sessions. Sometimes they lasted a year or 2 years. But by and large, we probably had hundreds of characters, that like legit characters, that actually thing. I can think of maybe 5 characters that ever took a prestige class, maybe 4. My group did not like prestige classes. I did not like prestige classes. When a new book came out, I didn't even read them. I skipped them. I didn't care about them one bit. We would mostly make fun of them because we thought that they were try hard and gamey, and I just never liked prestige classes. So I couldn't even tell you like 5 prestige classes. I probably know the ones from the DMG, right? There was the Shadow Dancer, the Assassin, the Blackguard, the Lore Master, and the Dwarven Defender or something. I think those were like the 5 that were in the DMG. I don't, I mostly viewed them as, it was a direction in the game I just absolutely couldn't stand. I didn't like it at all, like one bit. So definitely not my thing. So thank you for the super chat, but I mean, at least the answer was kind of a hot take. So properly 3.5 classes should count towards the XP penalty as not a favorite class. Everyone ignored that. I agree, Andrew. And we did not. In fact, 3rd edition, I think a lot of people ignored the XP penalty, and then eventually they got rid of it, I think, in PF1, and maybe did they get rid of it in 3.5? But in 3.0, it was alive and well. And so, but people don't want to be punished, right? They only want power, and they only want new character broken things. And so it's one of those things where it's like, well, yeah, no wonder your characters were all so powerful and broken and cheesy, because you let people triple dip into multi-classes and prestige classes. And normally the game says that they should be getting like a massive XP penalty, but you never gave it to them because you're like, well, that wouldn't be fun. And then your game gets ruined and you wonder why. Yeah. So anyways, so that would be my list. 3.0, we found someone who likes the refocus. Refocus was silly, but delay is to be fair, pretty problematic, and I don't like that. But 3.0 is much better than 3.5. Yeah, John.
I am strong, strong, strong.
Let's see here. No, see, that's just the thing. We never made broken characters in 3rd edition or 3.5. Most of our characters were, barbarian 17, fighter, maybe like Aaron's one character was Reth, was a fighter cleric. I think he was a fighter. He ended the game at fighter 7, cleric 13. And of course, Dwarf's favorite class was fighter. So that worked out. And then he had an ASMR with the +1 ECL character named Ambriel, who was like 3 or something, or maybe a 3 paladin, 17 cleric, something like that. Maybe 5 paladin, 15 cleric. I don't exactly remember what he was. And then a lot of characters were just literally straight up, 20 ranger, 20 barbarian, 20 sorcerer, 20 wizard, 20 monk, 20 rogue. We didn't cheese the game. We just weren't interested. Like, we picked the class. We liked the class. We just stuck with the class. I couldn't tell you. That's what I did. Let's see here. Jose, thoughts on Daggerheart? I just joined. Well, Jose, we did a stream earlier this week on Tuesday. If you want to go back and watch it, you can find it on our channel, where we talk about Daggerheart for 2.5 hours, 3 hours. Long story short, Jose, I liked it. I think there's a lot of promise there. I think there's some clungy bits that need to be fixed up. The game might be a little bit too fiddly, but that is more of a problem for other people. I don't mind it too much. But there's some interesting ideas there, and I think it's beautifully presented, and I think it is a really cool game. I don't know how well it would be commercially, but I think it's interesting. So there's that. Your comment about how you can watch the show and say, this is where they use the move Comfort and Guide, inspired me to do that while I was watching Legend of Korra with my friend who'd never seen it. Look, I mean, I one of these streams, I'm just going to pull up clips from Avatar and from Legend of Korra, and I'm just going to basically convert it. We'll convert it as a group. We'll pause and we'll say, okay, what just happened there? What was the hard move? What was the move that got triggered here? I think that'd be fun. Do you think mechanics that don't promote character development exploration are harmful for RPGs? Should they belong in board games? Absolutely not. Role-playing games are games, Federico. I'm okay with games being gamey. I mean, it's a level of interesting, but no, I think it's absolutely fine. I'm fine with meta mechanics. I'm fine with meta thing, because at the end of the day, right, the person the game should be trying to serve isn't my PC. It's me, the player. It's about me having a good time and me feeling engaged and me having fun. And so anything that the game can do to bring me into that experience is great. I don't think role-playing games should be seen strictly as this liberal arts major story, would-be, wannabe author narrative thing. I think it's totally acceptable, and I consider it very much role-playing. When a group of people get together, they roll up characters, they go into a dungeon, they never speak in character once, they shoot the shit with each other, they roll dice, they kill monsters, they take their gold, they get a new magical sword or a new magic potion. That, to me, is totally acceptable way to play the game, and I think those characters are role-playing as much as anybody else is. But again, I know that I'm kind of off my rocker with that thought process, but I don't think that role-playing games have to be about this grand unification of story. I think having role-playing games be games, because it's in the name, and also it's how they were created. And it's look, you could say, well, Derek, that was 50 years ago. Okay, well, when D&D and Pathfinder and all these other games stop basically copying the mechanics pretty much one for one that they used to use 50 years ago, then maybe we can go in someone direct. And that's why I think people should, PBTA is so interesting, because it is a divorce. I mean, it's still, don't get me wrong, it's part of that lineage, but it is a definite branch away from that sort of board game, war game lineage or dynasty or genetics that so many games like D&D and Pathfinder are rooted in, going back to 1974, when D&D was made as basically a way to play miniature war games but instead of having an army, you had one person. I mean, that is literally what D&D was. It was taking the idea of normally people would get together and they would play war games, and like, you know, you'd have your general unit or you'd have your really cool Glorfindel hero unit, and they were cool. And then someone was like, what if we played a game where we were just that one person? What if we were just the cool general? What if we were just the cool warrior? Instead of playing out the whole battle, we just had individuals. So D&D was really originally just this idea of basically going from StarCraft or some sort of other RTS to a MOBA, right? That is what D&D was. And the lineage of D&D, which is still true today, I think is very much tied to that concept, where normally people were used to playing games where you were controlling a bunch of people. And then they were like, what if you just controlled one character and you worked as a team and you had some cool powers and abilities? Yeah, it was a MOBA. Oh, and you had to kill monsters and jungle to get magical items and and treasure and coin so that you could buy better items and level up. Does this sound familiar? It's a MOBA. But, oh, no, I'm not talking about a MOBA. I'm talking about D&D 5th edition. I'm talking about Pathfinder 2nd edition, D&D 4th, D&D 3rd, D&D 2nd, Pathfinder 1. I'm talking about all of it. So that lineage of game is very much still tied to this strategic, tactical, combat, exploration, kill stuff, level up, get treasure game. So, is there a game you think elegantly pairs narrative mechanics with tactical combat, or are those things always in opposition? How tactical, Tundalus. I mean, if you think Fabula Ultima is tactical enough, I would say Fabula Ultima does a good job of that. I think Strike does a pretty good job of that, especially with Strike using the Strike's mechanics so that after the combat is done, the combat is really just a very complicated way of resolving a check. And it's very much like a PBTA style check, right? Where maybe it's even more like a Daggerheart check, right? Where in Daggerheart, you can succeed and get a bonus, or you could succeed and it's normal, or you can succeed, but there's a cost, or you can fail, but you get a little bit of an opportunity, or you could fail and it has a severe cost. The whole process of the tactical fight in Strike is to generate an outcome in one of those 5 categories and then spin that into the narrative. So maybe Strike does it the best. But I certainly think Fabula Ultima does. Now, Fabula Ultima doesn't have a grid. That's why I said I don't know if that counts for does a game have to have a grid to be tactical? But I think Strike, maybe. Again, Strike has the problem that it's a little undercooked. I will be the first to admit that. It's a little undercooked, but there's ideas there that I think are really, really good. Now, of course, part of the problem with that is that divorces the simulation. And what happens in the combat gets described after the fact when the results come out later. Fantastic. But thank you, Tundalus. I don't know if you agree with me or not. Jordan having some corned beef. I missed it, man. When I used to work for my company, where I had to go into the office every day like a normal person, we would always do there's a really famous corned beef restaurant here in Cleveland, and they would always go and get this massive, trays of corned beef, massive Reubens, sandwiches. And I would always get one. And now ever since I left that company, I don't think I've had a corned beef sandwich. And every St. Patrick's Day, I'm like, oh, I should make corned beef. And then I just never do, but I do enjoy some corned beef. Now I would never want it even once a month, but like 2 or 3 corned beef sandwiches a year would probably be good for me. Let's see here. Mystic Theurge was Dr. Waits' prestige jam. Yeah, you cheesy fuck. Of course. That way you get all of the wizard spells and cleric spells. No, I'm just kidding. Trajan said, started Dune and did just that. What if Duke Leto preempts the Atreides move to Arrakis by speaking at the Landsrod and saying that Arrakis should be shared, causing the houses to demand access? Exactly. I think that's a really interesting way to do almost any sort of really heavily established IP-based game, because then you really do feel like you have carte blanche to do your own thing while at the same time not feeling beholden or that you're somehow violating or desecrating the core concept of the game. So I agree with you. I think that is actually really cool. And also, I think that's a really cool scenario, because I think the politics of the Landsrod is a big part of what I would really want to engage with in Dune. And by and large, you know, Paul's ascension to God Emperor, or well, not God Emperor, that's Leto, but between Paul and his son, they basically completely neuter and get rid of the power of the Landsrod. So, all right, it's a pretty good list. You won't riot. All right. Wait, so is the take that Pathfinder is less than 3.0? No, wait. No, wait, which way? Wait, I got to read this here. Pathfinder is greater than 3.0? No, Coates. Mine would be 3.0 is the best. 3.5 is second best. Pathfinder 1 is the least. I mean, each one of those things just basically made the game more and more complicated. One thing that Pathfinder 1 did, which I could not stand, is added capstones. I hate capstone abilities in D20 games at level 20. I hate them. I hate them so much. So I'd much rather there not be. In fact, I'm like, you should get your last ability at like 15 or something, like in that range. I just think capstones are terrible. Let's see, just catching up here. 3.5 made the Ranger great again. No stupid pick your dragons level 1 when you'll never fight them. Okay, I mean, look, there were mechanical issues. I agree. The Ranger favorite enemy was kind of problematic in its own way. Personally, Andrew, I would have been fine if the Ranger stuck with the lineage of the Ranger from first edition and from second edition, where they, you know, they were against giants and dragons and goblins and orcs. And the idea of that, like a Ranger was, I mean, they made it so generic, because then it became the Ranger is a hunter and they can hunt aberrations and also undead, but also plants. It was just, it felt kind of, you know, weird and all over the place. So that anyways. Now, Paul, I mean, here's the thing. I think third edition. Now, listen, third edition multiclassing was a really a revolution in many ways, and it really was interesting. I just think that people didn't use it the way that it should have been used. Okay, the for me, okay, the dream of the third edition multiclass. One of my favorite. Let me see if I could. I probably can't find it quickly enough. One of my favorite stat lines of all times is from the third edition Forgotten Realms campaign setting, where they introduced that came out pretty early in third edition, and let me see if I can find it really quick. Here we go. And they did they did the characters from Forgotten Realms. And one of the characters that they did was like Dritz Duerden. And the way that Dritz Duerden was represented in third edition was that he was a fighter. Because, and again, I'm going off here on a rant. If you don't know Dritz, I'm sorry. But of course, Dritz grew up in Menzoberranzan, being trained by Zaknafine, going to Melee Magrath, and being trained as a fighter and being trained as a warrior. Again, the reason Dritz dual wields is not because he's a ranger. When Dritz was written, rangers didn't dual wield. Fighters dual wielded, especially high agility drow fighters. It was a drow thing. It was a Dritz thing. It was a fighter thing, not a ranger thing. Anyways, in third edition, they gave him like 7 levels of fighter. Then they gave him 1 level of barbarian. Now, if you've read Dritz, can you tell me who or what or how Dritz gained a level of barbarian? I'll wait. I'll see if anybody in chat gets it. I mean, you guys are pretty nerdy too, so I'm expecting somebody will. Tundla says 1,000 orcs. No, that is not correct. Actually, this Dritz came out, but this Dritz came before this Dritz came out before 1,000 orcs was written. Living in cold caves on the surface for a while, Jay, by that point in time, he had already trained with Mushi, and so he was a ranger at that point. I'll give you guys 30 more seconds. And no. The answer is in the second book of the Dark Elf trilogy. After Dritz leaves Menzoberranzan, okay? After Dritz leaves in Menzoberranzan, what does he do? He roams the Underdark by himself for many years. And he has this personality that he calls the Hunter, right? And it's a primal, fury-based persona. And when Dritz is in the Underdark, he worries that he's losing himself to the Hunter with a capital H. And so if we were playing Dritz, we take 7 levels of fighter and then we take 1 level of barbarian. Well, why? That's not good for my build. Yeah, because it's a cool way to show your story. Okay. And then he leaves the Underdark and he meets Mushi, and then he starts training as a ranger. And so there's this idea that the multi-classing rules of 3rd edition would allow you to sort of reflect diegetically your character's growth or development rather than being like a build that you make. You know me, I hate builds. I hate builds so much. I hate the idea of builds. I think and unfortunately, the way that games are designed now, especially with prerequisites and all this other nonsense, it's like they kind of force you into making a build. And I just hate that idea. I want to play to find out what happens. And so multi-classing allows your character to change in a way that couldn't happen in 2nd edition D&D or 1st edition D&D. Because in 2nd edition D&D and 1st edition AD&D, multi-classing was a choice you made at level 1 and was usually something you could only do if you were like an elf or a half-elf, basically. And you were a fighter mage for the entire campaign. And so the 3rd edition, your character could literally start off as a fighter, and then 5 or 6 levels in, you might, something happens in the story where your character, becomes obsessed with preserving this wilderness and starts taking levels in ranger or taking levels in druid, And I think that being able to reflect now in 1st edition D&D, you couldn't do that. That was not an option. You couldn't just multi-class whenever you wanted to. You had to have decided that at the beginning of the game. So 3rd edition really opened up this space. And boy, what did they do? Everybody just turned it into car op, min-max bullshit. So Jay says, real Chad's dual class. Now, dual classing was awesome. You had to have insane stats, Jay. So most of the people who dual class were probably cheating. And it was only available for humans. Elf was just a class that was a dual class in AD&D, correct? No, Elf was a race in AD&D. Elf was basically a fighter mage, but it got both of them, and it could cast spells and armor, and was really good with weapons. And it was a class that was basic D&D, not AD&D. AD&D Elf was always a class. And bards were basically practically impossible. In fact, I think we looked at the math on it we did a stream, Jay, on bards. Called a good class is bard to find. And I think we figured out that like less than 0.05% of characters could ever qualify to become a bard. Yes, the hunter thing comes up when he fights Artemis. Yeah. Because he talks about having to dig deep and will he unleash the hunter, right? Does he need rage? So, When I started playing TTRPGs, I was so worried about telling a good story, but I learned the hard way that the number one thing is to make your characters have a fun time on Fridays. Well, Jose, I agree with you, but I do often hesitate, and I frequently give people the advice: don't overly concern yourself with making sure everybody has fun. And I know that sounds counterintuitive, but the reason I say that is because it can quickly turn you into a people pleaser, and it'll stop you from making the truly fun and memorable moments, because you're going to end up being so concerned with making sure nobody's upset and everybody's having fun, that you can end up robbing yourself of some of those really, really just super memorable, super important moments that can happen in an RPG. I do think, though, that you should not be worried about telling a good story. I think you should be more interested in discovering a feral situation or a feral story with unknown and uncertainty. And maybe it will go in a direction that is, unexpected, and potentially you might not do if you were only worried about making sure people have fun. But there's two types of fun, right? There's fun in the moment, and there's fun as the days turn into weeks, turn into months, turn into years, So I think that's important to note. Sounds like there should be a Monster Hearts play-by-post on the horizon. Monster Hearts, to be fair, London, Monster Hearts would be a good game to do play-by-post. A lot of PBTA games, in my opinion, would be good to do play-by-post, especially Monster Hearts, because I think a lot of times you end up in situations where not all the character, because there's not like a party in Monster Hearts. So you end up with a lot of situations where you have, 2 or 3 characters are over here, an NPC and a PC and another PC over here, and then another PC is just off on their own. You end up with that a lot in Monster Hearts. It's a little bit awkward when you're sitting around the table. Pastrami's good too. Can't argue with pastrami. Arjun, hey, Day. Do you ever feel like PBTA games don't have enough mechanics to stay interesting over a long period of play? I ran into this feeling with Monster of the Week. Yes, I do. But I also don't think PBTA games are made for long periods of play. So yes, I do. But I also feel like sometimes, not every game system is designed to run for 50 sessions. I think a lot of PBTA games are probably better served by being in the 10 to 30 session campaign. And I think as you get towards the end of that, I think you really run the risk of it getting stale. That being said, another thing, Arjun, is I think in any long duration PBTA game, whether it's Dungeon World, Monster of the Week, Monster Hearts, character progression should occur. People sometimes should be, killing off their characters or taking a new playbook because what happened to their character changed them enough. So if you're playing Monster of the Week, right, your character may have started off as, the mundane or the normal, but, after months or years of playing, they've become, it's like, think about like Willow's progression in Buffy, right? She started off as just kind of like the mortal, normal sidekick, smart girl, which was good at researching. And she ended up becoming a witch. And in PBTA terms, it might have been more fictionally appropriate mechanically appropriate in the fiction for her to retire essentially her character and make a new playbook with a whole new list of abilities. So I do think there's something to be said about that too. I prefer 3.0 over 3.5, but I also prefer Pathfinder over 3.5. Not sure exactly why. Fair enough. Nin, do you dislike capstones because of multiclassing or because you never get to use them? Both. That's the two reasons. Well, the two reasons I don't like them is because of multiclassing, because you never get to use them, and I think because they create this false promise. One of my favorite bands of all time is the Dave Matthews Band, and there's a line from their first album from Cry Freedom. No, that's from the second album. It says, "The future is no place to place your better days." And so the same thing is true, I think, with D&D and with Pathfinder and with character classes. There's so many people who play these games who basically go, yeah, my character's going to completely suck for the first 7 levels. But boy, once I hit level 8 or 9, my character's going to turn on and the build is going to come together and I'm finally going to get to have fun. I think that is such horrible because, like, number one, we all know this. A lot of times the campaign never makes it past level 5, level past 6, right? You know, focus on today. Focus on what you're doing right now. Don't worry about what's happening to your character 5 levels again because you might not get it. Tomorrow's not promised. So putting, your better days into the future, I think, is already fundamentally problematic. Capstones are that to the millionth degree because it can just make people look at their character and just go, man, I can't wait till I'm 20. Then I'll finally be cool. And I just feel like that's just such a bad message to give. And I don't like it. And I also don't like because it fucks up with, thing, Shepard says DMB is so damn good. Well, Shepard, I'll be honest with you. After Leroy died and then they brought in the new people and now that Boyd has left and they didn't replace Boyd, so they don't have a violinist or a fiddle player, even in their live sets. Because Dave Matthews Band is the band I've seen them live the most. And I think I've seen them live, I don't know, probably over 30 times, maybe, definitely over 20, but I think it might be over 30. Maybe not 30. All right, over 20. Anyways, I haven't really seen a show of theirs in a while, and I haven't even actually listened to any of their new albums. I just the style of the music has changed and the people have changed. So, I mean, don't get me wrong, I will always go back to Under the Table and Dreaming and Crash and Before These Crowded Streets and Every Day and Busted Stuff and, all that stuff. But, Big Whiskey and the Grugrux King. It's probably like my last album that I probably will still regularly listen to. So anyways, DMB. Hey, Mike, glad to be watching the end of the super secret stream, which has over 100 people watching. Looks like you need more secret streams. Listen, this is your reward for being, for paying attention, maybe being a patron, having your notifications on is, you get to join us. So, hey, it's, we're all just hanging out here. Are you familiar with the Epic 6 hack for 3rd edition? What do you think? Love it. Fantastic. Yes, we played it several times. E6, I think, is a great model. Another model, which we used sometimes, is we would use like the double half double model. So in like the double half double model would be like, let's say that you really like levels 5 to 11. So what you would do is you would give double XP so that the group quickly gets to level 5. Then you go from doubling the XP to not regular, but having the XP from levels 5 to 11 and then, or 13 or something. And then once they're at 13, you double up the experience again. And that way you kind of quickly get through the beginning part to where your characters are kind of, have a little bit more interesting meat on the bones and they're not quite so fragile. And then you spend a lot of time at levels 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then when you get to like level 12 or 13 and the game kind of starts to break down and suddenly all the characters are way too powerful to really actually be interesting, then, but you don't want to just end the game at 13. So you crank the dial all the way back up to 10. You just fly through the last, couple levels of the game, maybe in a month or two. It's this like whirlwind, quick, rapid finish till, the end when you fight God in space. And then the game is over. See here. Sorry, I'm just trying to keep up with everything. Jimmy, why are capstones bad? Again, I think I answered that earlier. But multi-classing and people just becoming obsessed with the end of the game instead of the current version of the game. John, so few of us ever actually did that were legitimately playing the game. Corned beef sando sounds good. Daggerheart probably trying to rectify the long-term PBTA problem. I mean, it depends, Jackal Torn Moons. I mean, the game is 10 levels long. How long is a level? Is it one milestone per adventure and you're going to play 10 adventures? I mean, if we think about the classic, I mean, let's look at 3rd edition D&D, all right? 3rd edition D&D came out with a series of adventures. Now, I think it's important to note, this is not an adventure path because these games weren't, connected with like an ongoing story arc. But you had Sunless Citadel, and that took characters from level 1 to level 3. And then you had Forge of Fury, which took characters from 3 to 5. And then you had Speaker in Dreams, which took characters from 5 to 7. And then you had the Standing Stone, which took characters from 7 to 10. You had the Heart of Nightfang. And that took you from 10 to 13. Deep Horizon was 13 to 15. Lord of the Iron Fortress was 15 to 17. And then the last one was, of course, Bastion of Broken Souls, which was 17 to 20. So you're talking about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 adventures to get to the end of the game. Nowadays people think about quote unquote adventures, and there's either, it's like, oh, it's an adventure. D&D 5e does this all the time. It'll be like, it's an adventure for, take characters from levels 3 to 14. What the fuck is that? It's not an adventure. That's a campaign. Secondly, you've got adventure paths from Paizo. Number one, they usually only have 6 adventures, but it's not really 6 adventures. It's just one gigantic adventure that takes you from levels 1 to 20. You are fundamentally telling one story. I personally love this style of game. I think that if your campaign has, 7 to 10 adventures, I think that's a lot of leveling, of experiencing, I don't know. I think it's fine. So in the question of Daggerheart, if you're milestoning every other session or something like that, yeah, then the game is going to be really short. If the milestone is when you beat an adventure, then yeah, you could easily have this, right? Trajan, how would you alter PBTA to make them long running? How do you see the process of creating new triggers and moves? Again, Trajan, I think I kind of explained this, but I would just encourage characters to choose new playbooks more often and fundamentally rebuild their characters. I think even if it means the stats get kind of reset, any PBTA game on a long enough timeline, the stats get too high, you run out of moves to choose, and the game becomes stale. I mean, that's just the function of the game to a certain extent. I went to their show in Toronto last summer. It was definitely the weakest of the 6 or 7 I've been to. Still fun, but not the same. And that is exactly how I feel, KC. Still fun, but not the same. I'd say double half retire. All right, that's fair enough. High level power fantasy. I kind of feel the same, honestly. Book said getting to level 10 is about a year. So if they are assuming that we play every week, and let's say we play 50 weeks out of 52. So that means you're leveling up every 5 sessions. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I maybe, I don't know. I don't think that's terrible. Love to hear all the 3.0 love. I remember how entranced I was by its janky and retrospective simulations aspects. Same. And I still love it. But yes, same. Definitely janky. There was a famous article about how the best Smith in the realm is an expert 5. Absolutely. I loved it. Those 8 3.0 adventures that made a campaign were great. They were great. I mean, they were truly great. I mean, I think these are some of the best adventures. Well, some of them are the best adventures that were ever created. And I know they were for 3rd edition. I think, and again, this is out of 10. Okay. I think Sunless Citadel is like a 7 out of 10. I think Forge of Fury is like a 9 out of 10, maybe a 10 out of 10. I think Speaker in Dreams is like a 5. I will admit that. I think Standing Stone is a solid 7. I think Heart and Ache Fang Spire is a 9 or a 10. You know what? Fuck it. I'm giving it a 10. It's my rating. Deep Horizon is probably the weakest of them all. It's like a 3. You could skip it. Lord of the Iron Fortress is amazing. It's an 8. And Bastion of Broken Souls is like a 9. So it's just so good. And again, they weren't all great. You know, some of them missed a little bit. Speaker in Dreams and especially Deep Horizon were misses somewhat. But by and large, they were just really great episode. But anyways, yeah. Episodic adventures are as popular nowadays as episodic TV, 100%. And I just think that they work really well. Now, we've covered this in other streams, but the thing that I think is so important about episodic adventures in D&D is, look, we got to be realistic here, people, okay? We all dream that we're going to pick up that brand new adventure path, whether it's from Paizo or D&D, and we're going to play it for the better part of a year, 2 years, that the characters are going to go all the way from level 1 all the way to level 20. They're going to encounter all the NPCs. They're going to solve all the problems. And again, these adventures are designed such that it's all one big story. But you know what happens? 50% of the time, 70% of the time, 80, 90% of the time, you don't make it that far. You make it a couple months in, maybe you make it a year in, and then somebody moves or somebody has a kid or somebody just loses interest and the campaign starts to peter out. And before you know it, it just ends. And it doesn't end with a bang. It ends with a whimper, as they always tend to do. Or maybe it does end with a bang and everybody has a big fight and you just leave it. But the problem is when you look back, because you were essentially just playing one adventure, it feels like you didn't accomplish anything. Whereas if you look at this older style of episodic adventures, Sunless Citadel was not the beginning of the precursor to some. No, it's just its own thing. And when Sunless Citadel is over, you have beaten the adventure. There is no note that there is no princesses in the next castle. There's no note or journal entry in the villain's lair that leads you to the next breadcrumb that points out that villain was actually not the real villain. It's all part of some big huge. No, it's over and done with. You came in, you kicked ass, you solved the town's problem, and you're on to the next adventure. And so what ends up happening is if you and your group come in and, you know, you beat Sunless Citadel and then you beat Forge of Fury and you beat Speaker in Dreams and then, you know, you end up maybe getting to Standing Stone and it's not that great and your campaign fizzles and dies. Okay. But no one's going to look back. You can look back and no one's going to look back and say, man, we didn't do anything. No, because you had these 3 adventures that you succeeded, that you completed, that it was over and done with. And so each one is designed to stand very much on its own. And not like even like in fact, there is no real connection between them. So it's not even like one of those situations where it's like, oh, they're all tied together, but they're fun individually. No. They're just individual. They're just their own thing. And I think that's really cool. I'm a big fan of that. Hard Knife Spire was my favorite of these. Yeah, baby. It's great. Roll for Combat. What's up, Steven? Level 16 in Agents of Edgewatch, baby. By the way, Steven, we got to figure out what day we're going to go to that ball game because I was looking and I do have a hotel Wednesday night. So I know there's a game Tuesday and there's a game Wednesday. So potentially, I don't know what your plans are, but potentially we could go to the game Tuesday night and then we could leave Wednesday, get down there Wednesday evening, check in and be there before the con starts. So maybe that could be the play. So, all right, well, let me know. We'll figure out the schedule, but I'm just letting you know. I wasn't sure if I had the hotel for 3 nights or 4 nights, and I do have it for 4 nights. I have it for Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night. So I could go down there Wednesday, is what I'm saying. We have had great success in completing Adventure Pass. There being a story, in quotations, keeps our group going. It's episodic stuff that tends to make us burn out on a game. Interesting. And Michael seems to maybe answer that with, but how will the players know where to go next if they're not being led by the nose? And he put a /S here, but I think Boothby's statement would indicate that his players do need to know. And in fact, if they don't know where to go next and they're not led by the nose, then the campaign falls apart. Yeah, that's very interesting. It's interesting. Here's why it's interesting. Because, and this is like a problem for me, when I play campaigns or when I GM campaigns, the thing that I am interested in is not the story. It's not the adventure. It's definitely not the campaign. It's the characters. The characters are the through line that I'm interested in. The characters are what I want to follow. So for me, the episodes, the stories, I mean, those are just vehicles for me and my group of people to experience and do things. I don't really care about the campaign or the story. I care about my character. I care about my fellow PC's characters. And I want to see them do funny shit and cool shit and epic shit. So for me, it's very much like I like the episodic campaigns because I like getting a chance to see my characters in a bunch of different situations and, be able to sort of put a bow on something and go off and do something new and something different. I think that gives a lot of variety to the campaign. So, yeah. Railroading is pretty common, but it's also expected by a lot of groups. Yeah, it's just so, oh, man. I got to be honest with you. I got to really give it up to a lot of the GMs out there because I don't know how you could do it. I don't know how you could do it. I could not play with players like that. I just couldn't do it. I mean, Tarek, you're such a good GM and you're such a, I couldn't do it. Honestly, I couldn't do it. I would just like lose my shit. I would be so uninterested in playing with that group of players. I'd be like, you all bore the shit out of me. One of the very famous things that I am known to do is like if I have a published adventure or something like that. Very commonly, I will be sitting there with the adventure. The group is going to it. Maybe this happens in the first session. Maybe it happens in session number 3 or 4 or 5. But I'll just be playing it, and then I'll get to a point in the character, and everyone will joke because it happens. It happens several times throughout the years. I'll take the adventure, and like someone will want to do something or say something, and I will look, and there'll be like a brief moment, right? I'm human too, where I look down, and I'm rereading a little bit of a section. Look up at the players. Look down. Look up. Look down. And I'm reading it, and I go, what the player just suggested is totally reasonable, totally even maybe logical, but it will completely fuck up this entire campaign. And there's that moment, right? Even me, there's that brief moment where I go, am I really going to throw away the money, the time, the prep, the whole premise that we've been doing on into this adventure just because some player wants to do their own thing, right? That's the voice in all of our heads. And, even for me, that voice pops up, right? And there's that brief moment where you want to be like, well, it doesn't work. And you should probably really go that way, right? Like even for me, but then it's a brief moment and then the joke, which has happened several times in the campaign or several times over the years is I go, welp, okay. And then I will take the adventure. Sometimes it's like a full hardcover, whatever. And I will literally just go, and I will just fling it over my shoulder. The adventure will hit a wall or the floor, maybe even rip. And I'll just be like, all right, well, we're working on how to net now. Let's go. Okay. Yes. Okay. So you're going to do that. And you burn what was supposed to be the haunted house that you were supposed to adventure in. You burn that down. And we'll go from there, or just like, okay, well, that was supposed to be the main villain of the campaign. But whatever reason you figured it out and you kill him in his sleep. Okay. So moving on, like that is done. That happened. And now now we're in uncharted waters. And so adventures just like that even predicate, even the attempt of a plot almost always fail for me and for my group because somebody does something that is going to fucking shift that thing off the track so quick. And again, I have that brief moment where I like go, ugh. And then I go, nope, this is why I play RPGs. I play RPGs so that I can be surprised to find out what's going to happen. and then I chuck the adventure, and we move on with our lives. So there you go. So Michael, that is not that far from the truth. My group has a secret shame game, Champions 5th edition. It's not for most players. Is there a TTRPG that is anyone's guilty pleasure? You know it sort of sucks, but can't help but love. I don't know. I mean, 3rd edition D&D. A lot of people think 3rd edition D&D is the inferior game, right? That 3.5 or Pathfinder 1 fixed it, but I don't think so. I think 3E D&D is the better game. So I'll say 3E D&D. 3.0 E-D&D. I love railroading, sort of, but yet I am the breaker of campaigns. I never, ever go by the book. Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's good, but I guess I guess it depends on the players that you're playing with, you know? I mean, I would never want to, I never put myself in a situation where I'm playing with people who, when I go, okay, what do you do? That they're like, what do you mean? Like a deer in the headlights. Like, I want to play with people who are motivated and driven, who are, it's like they feel frustrated in a way if there's like an adventure that they have to go do. Like, no, they have plans and goals, and they have motivations, and or even there's just shit in the game. They're like, dude, it'd be so cool to go fight trolls. Like, I mean, it would be so awesome. I love fighting trolls. They're so cool. And like the minis look awesome. We should go to like a swamp and go find trolls and just go kill trolls, because that would be awesome. Like, that's literally how like my players think a lot of times. And it's great, you know? It's great. Sean says, I had a session where the group literally had a choice between Quest A and Quest B. After the session, one player commented that the choice wasn't clear. Yeah, again, Sean, I mean, props to you. I would really struggle. I think I would. I really would struggle with that, you know, with that group. 3.0 was a little looser and wackier. Ding, 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 ding. Mighty Dave gets it again. Yeah, Dave is 100% correct. It was looser. It was wackier. And there were certain things about the system, particularly some of the spells and the buffs, that I just thought created better, more unexpected, fun game outcomes. So, my players, for the most part, don't want to make a bad decision, so default to not making any decisions. And that, you know, that's another thing that, like, what Boothby's bringing up. You know, my players are playing in this Forbidden Lands game, and you know, my players have kind of gotten to the point where, I know we don't want to turn this into a Forbidden Lands stream, but in Forbidden Lands, you can basically re-roll. It's called push. It's a year 0 engine game. After you make a die roll, if you fail, you can push the die roll and basically get to roll the dice again. And in Forbidden Lands, you are looking, they're all D6s. You're looking for a 6 or higher. If you get a 6 or higher from your pool of D6 that you roll, then you've succeeded. If you don't get any, you fail. And you can re-roll. It's called pushing, and then gets you a second chance to roll a 6. But if you roll any 1s, your character takes a little bit of damage. And by and large, damage is pretty easy to heal. And this not only gets you a second chance at success, it also gives you a resource called the willpower point, which is what you use to power your spells, your special abilities. And you know, so my group pushes all the time. But I've read, or I've talked to fellow patrons who basically say my players never push. They're terrified of, you know, they're terrified of taking damage, and they don't want to risk, you know, they don't want to take unnecessary damage. Seems like crazy to them. So they don't push. My group, by and large, would rather be dead than bored. So, yeah, I mean, right. I mean, you know, this was when I first started playing with Bob, and we were playing the Rise of the Rune Lords Adventure Path. he told me that he was really worried that he wasn't going to do it right and he was going to screw it up. And I just realized like how, and he was brand new to TTRPGs. So this idea was already kind of embedded in him, in his mind, that his decisions were the potential weak point in the story. That it's not that the story was great and the story was amazing. It's Bob and the player that might fuck it up. And like, I think that's just such an unhealthy mindset to have, especially in RPG games. Another intense session of Pendragon. Beowulf, you missed it earlier. I was giving you props for your Forbidden Lands resource hack fix. We've also tried a couple of games with push mechanics, and they are terrified of pushing consequences. Exactly. What you punish will be avoided. I mean, let me put it this way. When we played in Forbidden Lands, your character can cast spells that are a level above where they could cast it, right? So it would be like a level 1 character in D&D or Pathfinder being able to cast Fireball if they wanted to. But when you do that, you automatically trigger a roll on the miscast table. And everyone's like, oh my God, miscast, it's so horrible. In the first session, Aaron Smith of, Mr. Smith of our channel, he over-channeled or overcast, not once, but twice. Once was just to open a stuck door. So he was just like, yeah, of course I'm going to roll on that mishap table. That's why it's there. That's why I'm playing a PC, right? I didn't come in this to be timid. I didn't come in this to not to cast spells or not to do the cool shit, Exactly, Mike. It's just a game. Your PC dies, they die. I found the fear of losing a PC is worse among players of the later edition of the game. 100%, which is really ironic because, well, that's the problem, Mike. See, that's the problem. The problem, this is probably what we'll finish up on here. The problem is that, and I don't know what these numbers are exactly, but the issue here is that, okay, obviously, if you're playing a game where death chance, let's say it's, I don't know, let's say that it's greater than 30%, okay? By and large, I dislike this, okay? This is your meat grinder games. This is what a lot of fucking OSR games try to be nowadays. This is dungeon crawl classics. I dislike these games. I think they're taking the idea of original D&D and they're like hyper fixating on how dangerous it was, okay? I just like these games. Now, let's say we go to something that had like a 5 to 10% chance of death, okay? To me, this is AD&D. This is BX, basic, okay? So death is very much on the line, but it's not the rarest thing in the world, right? I mean, when you play a couple of sessions, you should probably expect that someone in the party is going to die. Then down here, okay, we have a game with a 0% chance of death. A game like Fabula Ultima, or a game like 7th Sea, where a character basically has to choose to die in order to death. Now, KC says per combat, per session, per campaign. KC, we'll say per session. Okay? So when you're playing Fabula Ultima or you're playing 7th Sea, then you know that your character can't die unless you choose for them to die. And it's a cool moment for your character. And you get to that point. And some people, their minds break when they think about this because the idea that they would ever choose to have their character die is so foreign to them that they can't even imagine why or how or what that would be like. Now, here's the thing. I think both of these are great because both of these set the expectation of what's going to happen and deliver on it. So what's the problem? The problem is when you have something like a 0.05 to 0.5% chance of death. Now, what I basically, and so for what is this? To me, this is like 5e. This is like PF2. And I know everybody's gonna say, "Oh, there's plenty of there was that time that everybody died." I get it. I understand. But by and large, the problem with 5th edition and Pathfinder 2nd edition is that the games and the players who are playing them actually want this. But their, I don't know, pride, their traditionalism, their obsession with old school mechanics that don't really apply to what they actually want out of a game won't let them use this. They think this is weak and removes it. And so they tell themselves, 0% chance of death. Why even play? You got to have chance of death on the line. And so they do get chance of death on the line. But the game designers are smart. They know that the players in these groups are all fucking idiots. And so what they do is they introduce this concept of death, but it happens super rare. And the game gives you all of these many layers of protection to assure that it almost never happens. So why is this so bad? Because the problem is when something is really rare and then happens anyways, it is fucking tilting. That's the problem. By making it rare, you are now making it so that the player incorrectly goes, "Oh, I'm not going to die. Oh, I'm going to fulfill my character's arc. I should go buy that $50 Hero Forge mini. I should go buy the dice that are custom colored to my character's theme." Because in their mind, their character is safe, but they're not safe. Here, they would be safe, but they're not safe. They can still die. And because it's such a rare event, it just feels worse. The game thinks it's doing you a favor by shielding you from this 5 to 10% death, but it's not. It's actually setting up a situation where you're just going to be more irritated when you do die. And I think that that's like the worst of both worlds, And Jay said it exactly the same. The harder it is to die, the more players fear death. Yeah, in a weird way. So, when it's really hard to die, then characters get really afraid of it. Like when you're playing AD&D BX, like, yes, everyone has a healthy appreciation for death, but you understand that, it's only a matter of time. And so that gives you a certain level of detachedness to it, and you can really enjoy it then. And when you're playing Fabula Ultima or 7th Sea, and you know that there's no way that your character can die unless you think it is a cool, appropriate narrative moment for you to do so. Again, there's that feeling of freedom. But when you're playing some of these games that are very complicated and have all these characters and have this really elaborate character story arc, and you know that your character really shouldn't die, but there is a chance in hell that you might, that could be very, very frustrating. To say nothing, Mike, as you pointed out, when I talk about AD&D and BX, if your character does die, right, it might take you less than 10 minutes to make a new character. If your character dies in the combat during Pathfinder 2 and your characters are all, 5th level, good luck making a character quickly and getting them back to the table, right? So, without death, there is no mechanical way to put pressure on the characters. I completely disagree. Oh, in 5e. Well, then, okay. Fair enough. If you're running a narrative-based campaign, maybe dying has to be solely a player's choice. A book mustn't end halfway through the story, right? I mean, there's different ways of thinking about this, Trajan. For some people, the story is what happens when all's said and done. Other people view it as like, this idea that your character is creating the story and as you're going through it. I think both of those philosophies are fine. I just think that if you are going to play the game where you are sort of building a story together and you have these ideas, then yeah, you should be playing a narrative-based campaign where dying is a player choice, because otherwise it's the game. Eventually the dice are going to catch up with you. And what ends up happening, by the way, a lot of times in these games is that moment comes and the GM goes, well, shit. And then they end up fudging or cheating because they want, they should have just, been an adult and admitted that what they want is a 0% chance of death. And what they're actually giving their players is a 0% chance of death, but they're lying to their players. They're lying to their players and making their players think that they have, a 30% chance of death or a 10% chance of death, when in reality, those characters have a 0% chance of death. I think that is the ultimate fuck you to players and in treating them like children. That to me is the same. That is the same philosophy as like parents who basically use Santa Claus as a tool, a leverage to get them to behave better. You're lying to your child in order to control their behavior. If that doesn't seem problematic, I don't know what does. It's for the magic of the Christmas season. No, it's not. It's so that during the very stressful holiday season, which we all know from, October, November, December, very stressful, and the kids are going to be home for Thanksgiving break, and the kids are going to be home for Christmas break. So you need to control them. How do you control them? Threats. Threats of non-materialism. Does it count as death if you just get raised dead cast afterwards? Jay, that's a great question too. Because if your character does die and then you can just get brought back, what was even the point of dying? No Beer says somehow PF2 is a 0.5% chance of death game from levels 1 through 8. Then you start getting monsters with death effects and kill one PC for fight. I would still be interested. I don't think there's that many monsters with a death effect. No Beer. I could be wrong, but it feels like there's not that many. Also, I'm interested. Can a hero point save you from a death effect? I don't know. My guess is it can. I don't know. It's interesting. All right. Well, hero points cannot save you from death effects. Is that true? I'm not saying I disbelieve you, but I kind of disbelieve you. Let's see here. Unconscious dying. All right. They can reduce her to death. Let's see here. If you're reduced to 0 hit points by a death effect, you're slain instantly without needing to reach dying 4. All right. Let's see here. You can spend all of your hero points to avoid death. You can do this whenever your dying condition would increase. The instant death rules do seem to... See, it's weird. It doesn't necessarily say that you're not dying. I don't know. It does say spend all your hero points to avoid death. I'm just saying. Anyways, it would appear that they do, but there's also sort of a weird thing there. So, Nober, this is like in D&D 3rd edition. There was a cleric spell called Death Knell, where you could run over to an unconscious character and touch them, and it would kill them instantly, and then you would get a bunch of temporary hit points or something. And it would be like having a bunch of NPCs who are just fully equipped with that spell, who just run around and just like try to kill PCs and murk them while they're down. This is part of the reason why I don't like NPC spellcasters in D&D, because they're designed very differently than the way that PCs do. And it is definitely a raw versus rye situation. Again, I'm not putting it against them. You know what? In which case, Pathfinder 2, it's like even more crazy, because it's like, they're like, look, we gave you this hero point mechanic so that you can save yourself from death. And you're like, well, rules is written. It doesn't save you from instant death spells. And it's like, well, that's what the rules say. I guess you just get fucked. Sorry. It's very strange. It's very mixed signals. I'll just say that. It's very mixed signals. All right. Well, I'm going to end it here. Give you guys your back Sunday night. We'll be back Tuesday. I don't know what we're going to talk about. We're going to be in the studio. It might be one of the last studio streams because we got to start breaking it down. We'll probably do some Patreon exclusive streams. So while we're breaking down the studio and just shooting the shit and, not like a normal stream, but, construction stream. But we do have to be out by the end of next month. So, and I don't want to rush it. So, and I got to get the utilities canceled and all that other stuff. So, and then Thursday, I'm going to be in Las Vegas. So we got pretty close to the tip goal, but we didn't quite make it. So, I might hop on and say hi to everybody on Thursday, maybe for a few minutes, but we probably won't do a full stream like I did from the boat that one time when I was out in the middle of the Caribbean Sea and I streamed. I did a live stream from the middle of the Caribbean Sea, and from Vegas and some past trips. But always look forward to seeing you guys and gals there. If you're a member of the Patreon, thank you so much for your support because we are like 2 people away, maybe. Actually, someone joined, right? So we might have 399 patrons right now. Now, of course, we always have some people that quit during the course of the month. And so in April 1st, we'll drop back down as we always do. But right now, they are still technically members of the Patreon. And I think we're at 399. So it'd be cool to get to 400. That's all I'm saying. It'd be cool to get to 400. So if for your sake, for your daughter's sake, maybe it's time to join the Patreon. But thank you to Ben for the $20 tip. Thank you to Chase for the $5 tip. Thank you to Mighty Dave and Tundalus for super chats. And thank you to all of our incredible and amazing folks who support us each and every month in the Patreon. So Casey says the final shot from the studio should mirror the last shot from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Right. I'm standing there and then I turn off the light, and then Bob runs through with pulling up his pants and says, wait for me, wait for me, wait for me. I think that's how Fresh Prince of Bel-Air ended. I could be wrong, but yes, the old PF2E, is this flavor or is this rules text thing? Gee, if only there was a way to distinguish between flavor text and rules text, as if we could use some sort of, I don't know, italics or bold-faced language. Anyways. Well, Cephalopod, thank you so much for that.
Cephalopod tip $10. Have fun in Vegas. No need to stream if you're having too much fun. Smile.
Well, because I will stream. I probably won't do 2 hours, but I'll hop on. I'll get on there for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and we can all shoot the shit and we can talk about how the trip is going. So we'll hop on there. I appreciate the support, Cephalopod. Thank you so much for that. So again, thanks to everybody who supported me tonight. Thanks to all the patrons. Hopefully I'll see you on the Patreon, or we'll see you Tuesday on Nights of Last Call. Good night, everybody.